One nobody expected it, a simple excavation of mysterious ruins. Shattered an ancient seal, triggering a brutal catastrophe for all of mankind. A crimson fog swept through cities, and anyone caught inside was doomed. They suffered violent, rapid mutations, losing their minds and dying horribly. Animals fared no better. They warped into blood-red monsters. Wielding terrifying, unnatural powers, ordinary human life turned into a nightmare. But this was no movie. This was a grim, brutal reality. Grotesque beasts destroyed entire cities, and nothing stopped them. Absolute panic poisoned the entire world, and although the military tried desperately to fight back, they were completely powerless against them. Soon, there were far more monsters than humans could handle. People had to change quickly if you did not adapt. Death came instantly. Only a select, brutal few managed to survive. These rare survivors had the raw power and resources to hunt the beasts down, but they were barely human anymore. Honestly, it was impossible to tell where the man ended and the beast began. Take this mutated young man, whose hand had warped into a claw. Yet he found himself drawn to a small doll lying in the wreckage. Holding it tight against his chest, a final spark of humanity flared up. He broke down sobbing, crushed by the realization that he was far too late. To save his own little sister, just 3 days ago, the crimson fog first rolled across the nation, and the government begged everyone to remain calm. Citizens were ordered to lock themselves inside. But this boy and his family were still stuck on the highway. Soldiers suddenly blocked the road, screaming at them to clear the lane. Proving to everyone that this was no drill, but a real emergency. The boy's father knew better than to trust official promises. He wanted his family out of the city immediately. If soldiers were deploying, it meant an unprecedented crisis. They had to run, ignoring the soothing lies coming from the speakers. Meanwhile, in the back seat, the brother and sister huddled together. The terrified girl clung tight as an eerie sound echoed from the road, and a dense red fog swallowed them whole. Nobody knew what was hiding inside. Suddenly, an SUV plunged from the overpass, crashing directly onto their vehicle. Something had thrown it down like a toy. They survived, but the father's leg was hopelessly pinned in the wreckage, squinting through the shattered glass. As the mist parts, you won't believe what's waiting for them. Right in the middle of the road, a colossal mutant loomed. Soldiers opened fire, but the bullets bounced harmlessly off its skin. The beast kept advancing, forcing them to abandon the car and seek shelter inside a nearby building. The children managed to scramble out easily, but the crumpled frame trapped their parents, and the jammed doors refused to open. No matter how hard they pulled, the horrific creatures were closing in fast, brutally devouring everyone in their path as they advanced. The sister sobbed, paralyzed by fear. A brutal choice had to be made. The father pleaded with his son to act like a man, and he had to protect Shu. His mother begged him to save her. Just run. Suddenly, a massive, wolf-like beast lunged from the shadows. It loomed right overhead. The terrified kids stared at their parents. They knew this was goodbye. Those massive, bloodthirsty creatures were everywhere now. They were incredibly powerful, terrifying, and completely out for blood. A thick red mist choked the air. Finally, the brother made his choice. He grabbed Shu's hand and bolted. Nobody knew what was actually happening. Every living thing touched by that red fog was losing its mind. The siblings scrambled into a local supermarket, hiding behind the tall shelves. They held their breath, praying the monster outside wouldn't hear them. The brother knew this store was their best shot at survival. It had plenty of hiding spots and food to last them a while. They just had to wait for rescue, but then Shu gasped in pain. A brutal headache hit her, making her sob and clutch her head. Strange, bloody patches were starting to break out all over their skin. They had inhaled that toxic red mist, and it was taking effect. The fog was slowly creeping inside. Desperate, the brother soaked a napkin He pressed the damp cloth over Shu's face to help her breathe. But the young man was running out of time himself. Agony ripped through his entire body, sharper than anything he'd ever felt. His blood felt like boiling acid. He was right on the edge. The intense, burning heat inside him was literally tearing his chest apart. He bit down hard, refusing to scream and terrify his little sister. Shu could tell something was seriously wrong with her brother. He just forced a weak smile and told her it was fine. But their fragile safety is shattered as a monster steps in. The beast leaped forward, jaws wide open and ready to feast. It was an absolute titan, packing massive fangs and a heavy tail. They tried to run, but suddenly more beasts blocked every exit. Yet strangely, the creatures didn't attack them right away. Then an even bigger monster stepped out from the darkness. This new beast was massive. The siblings huddled closer in sheer terror. He realized they weren't just wild beasts, they had an actual leader. Staring at this pack, he genuinely believed today was his final day alive. But he knew running outside would be suicide. He turned back around, choosing to face the beast inside head-on. He pumped himself up, whispering that this thing was just a rabid dog. Grabbing a stray wooden stick, he quickly braced himself for a clash. But his weapon shattered instantly, and the beast opened its massive jaws. It was ready to tear the young man right in half. Suddenly, a sharp crossbow bolt slammed directly into the monster's eye. The beast screeched and backed away, revealing Shu standing with a crossbow. She had found it on a shelf and fired, saving her brother. He quickly praised her quick thinking, but they weren't safe yet. A single arrow wasn't nearly enough to put this beast down for good. A massive, one-eyed beast wants to devour the girl, forcing her to run for her life. Meanwhile, Hal feels awful as a strange, excruciating pain rips through his body from the inside. He can barely take a step, entirely confused by this sudden, violent mutation. Nearby, Zhu sprints through the store aisles, trying to lose the pursuing predator. But she trips and ends up cornered. Suddenly, a massive force strikes from above. A heavy metal shelf crashes down, trapping the beast, perched directly on top of it. Is a terrifying creature that looks exactly like her mutated older brother, Hal. He growls at the beast for daring to touch his sister, before driving a sharp weapon straight through its skull. Witnessing this, Zhu feels absolutely terrified of her mutated brother. Even so, she bravely rushes forward to calm Hal down, despite not knowing what is happening to his body. She desperately clings to him and starts crying out that she is completely safe, begging him to stop and regain control of his mind right away. Inside Hal's chaotic thoughts, memories of his late parents begin to flash vividly. They had always told him to protect his little sister and stay strong no matter what. Even though they are gone, Hal has to step up and keep Zhu safe now. Zhu keeps sobbing and calling out to her older brother, telling him over and over that she is okay, looking at him with desperate eyes. Slowly, her voice pierces his rage, allowing Hal to finally regain his humanity. His body shrinks back to normal, and he instantly apologizes for scaring her like that. But their emotional reunion is cut short, leaving them no time to talk. Another vicious beast breaks into the store, forcing the siblings to run again immediately. Hal grabs a heavy baton and brutally strikes the mutant wolf, threatening his little sister. To his absolute shock, Hal realizes his physical strength has increased dramatically. His heavy swings are easily crushing the beasts now. Hal yells for Zhu to quickly find a safe place to hide while he handles this pack alone. Seeing that the alpha has locked eyes on them, Hal decides to lure it away. But Zhu suddenly clings to him, terrified that he will lose control again. She is so afraid he might permanently transform into one of those mindless creatures. Hal gently reassures her, promising he will stay in control and return very soon. She just needs to stay hidden and trust him. He gives her a solemn promise that he will survive and come back for her. Hal now understands how his new powers work. Defeating these monsters grants him strength. Absorbing their energy makes him grow stronger. He steps out to face the threat. Hal knows that slaying this boss will give him the power he needs to protect her. This giant beast has to die today, no matter how tough it looks. But instead of fighting the giant beast directly, three massive, mutated dogs step forward to block his path. The main boss clearly thinks Hal is too weak to fight personally. Hal just smiles, muttering that he will tear through them all to reach their master anyway. Suddenly, one mutant dog lunges from his blind spot, sinking its massive teeth into Hal's shoulder, but a wound like this is nothing to him now. In fact, Hal's pure rage explodes, and he rips the beast apart with his bare hands, looking down at his newly mutated, clawed fingers. He finally understands what real, overwhelming power feels like. The remaining beasts scatter. In absolute terror, recognizing Hal as an apex predator, he quietly stares at his hands. He was completely lost, not understanding what was happening to him or anyone else. Meanwhile, the army arrived, helping the citizens by simply dropping heavy artillery. Helicopters rained down shells. Terrified and tired of waiting, Shui stepped outside. Yan Hao screamed at her to stay inside, but it was too late. A massive explosion ripped through the street, engulfing everything in a sea of fire. Soldiers quickly marched through the thick smoke to search for survivors. They found a bleeding boy, realized he was infected, and abandoned him. Instead, they quickly threw his terrified sister into the escaping helicopter. The troops moved fast, knowing the beasts would return at any moment. Soaring into the sky, the helicopter disappeared as Shui wept bitterly. She cried out, not understanding why her brother was not coming to save her. Yan Hao was in terrible shape, unable to move. He could not even stand, only reaching his hand toward the fading helicopter. Slowly, his beastly transformation faded, returning him to his normal, human self. But his only family was gone. 6 months passed in a flash after that day. He still had not rescued his sister, but he had learned something valuable. His beastly mutation was now hidden, allowing him to blend in as a regular human. After they took Shui, Yan Hao searched every single refugee camp, finding nothing. With no trace of her left, Yan Hao joined the lowest rank of the military. He became a private in the border patrol, knowing only soldiers had real information. Only the military could gather intelligence. Yan Hao was stationed at the border. Down at the Kishi border post, he apologized to his captain for his delay. The captain immediately kicked him in the back, furious that he was slacking off. He barked that they had some incredibly important guests arriving very soon. Once those VIPs got there, their exhausting shift would finally be over. But until then, they had to stay sharp. Yan Hao climbed up the tower. It had been 6 months since the deadly crimson mist first blanketed the world. Most cities were now total ruins, serving as hunting grounds for mutated beasts. Along with that crimson fog, a giant, mysterious red tower had risen. Humanity was forced to huddle behind high walls, staying as far from it as possible. Staring out into the haze, Yan Hao knew a deadly monster was waiting out there. Captain Jia Jun had told them about the special elite units stationed nearby. Their own border outpost was really just for show, a minor deterrent. After all, if the special forces failed, regular grunts would not stand a chance. Lately, everyone had been talking about the famous, elite anti-monster units. Rumor had it that these warriors were completely invincible. This legendary force always slaughtered the beasts with zero effort. Sitting high above, Yan Hao thought about how much he hated that blood mist. Its foul scent triggered a primal urge in beasts, driving them to slaughter everything. Suddenly, Yan Hao noticed the dense fog around the tower beginning to clear. But instead of safety, it looked like something massive was charging their way. The other guards spotted the strange, incoming movement as well. Their captain told them to calm down, but honestly, they had every reason to panic. The red fog suddenly thickened, rolling heavily toward their defensive checkpoint. Out of the fog, 2 fully armed soldiers emerged. Heavy gas masks began appearing from the dark direction of the city. Yan Hao tried asking what happened, but the panicked soldiers only screamed at him. They yelled that everyone needed to run and save themselves right now. But there was no time left. Something red suddenly sliced their bodies. Half the captain desperately radioed for retreat, trying to save whoever he could. But some massive force grabbed his hood, dragging him backward into the dark. A giant dinosaur-like beast had emerged from the swirling, thick crimson fog. It pinned the captain with one massive claw. Up above, Yan Hao watched. Safe from the initial chaos, but he could still hear his dying comrades screaming for him to run. Suddenly, Hao leaped straight down from the high tower, his entire body warping midair. By the time he hit the ground, he was a mutant. Another beast lunged forward with wide, drooling jaws, hoping to swallow him whole. But Hao was so wildly powerful now, he easily tore the beast completely in half with his bare hands, feeling absolutely amazing. Killing those two monsters had triggered a massive, intoxicating surge of raw power. Now he wanted to test his limits against a whole pack of them. And that chance arrived almost instantly. Hao braced himself and focused. He hoped this newfound strength would be enough, and these terrifying, monstrous hands wouldn't fail him in the fight. But then a sudden blast roared right over his shoulder, tearing a beast apart. Hao quickly spun around and peered through the swirling, bloody red mist, spotting the sharp silhouette of a female soldier. It was the captain of Burning Blood, the elite strike team, Sun Rui. She watched the bloody chaos with deep interest. And honestly, this was the worst possible moment to get caught by them. The special forces were here, meaning he had to morph back into a human immediately. Captain Sun Rui calmly ordered her squad to completely wipe out every single beast. Leave absolutely nothing standing. Suddenly, several rifles were aimed directly at him. Standing there in the thick crimson fog, Hao slowly raised his hands, pleading for them not to shoot. He was just Yan Hao, a low-ranking patrol private. Suddenly, a loud burst of heavy automatic gunfire erupted, shredding a massive monster that had been lurking nearby. The hidden threat was instantly eliminated. The captain slowly approached Hao, demanding to know where his weapon was. She stared at him with intense suspicion while he desperately tried to think. Before he could answer, the elite squad finished clearing out the defensive line. Preparing to pull back, the Special Forces unit dragged Hao along with them. They soon arrived at the temporary camp, where Sun Rui read the grim report. At the forward outpost, 2 elite soldiers from her rapid response unit had died, and 30 men from the patrol unit. In the center of the room, handcuffed to a chair, was Private Yan Hao, who couldn't understand why they were treating him like this. After all, he was a survivor too, but Captain Sun coldly pointed out that Hao had slipped away from his post hours before the massacre began. When he finally returned, the terrifying bloody mist uprising was already underway. That was extremely suspicious, and now the young private had to explain himself. Hao stammered that he simply fell asleep in some nearby quiet ruins. It turned out the guy had a habit of skipping out on his duty. His commander always covered for him, but Captain Sun thought that patrol unit was completely useless and beneath her attention. Meanwhile, the wounded Jiajun lay on hospital bed covered in bandages and totally unconscious. Still, the doctor confirmed the captain was out of danger. The latest test results showed his condition was relatively stable. At the same time, Captain Sun Rui reviewed the detained rookie's personnel file. He had finished basic training only 3 months ago, yet 2 elite special forces soldiers perished in that brutal clash, and she simply could not understand how Yan Hao survived. Keeping his head low, the boy claimed he was just terrified of dying, mentioning he did track and field back in school. Once that thick fog rolled in, his immediate instinct was to sprint. The captain shot back. If he was so deathly afraid of dying, why join the military in the first place? He must have a hidden agenda. But Hao kept quiet about his desperate search for his sister. Over the past 6 months, he had been hunting minor beasts nonstop, absorbing their raw essence. Step by step, the youth mastered his monstrous transformation, including his reversion to human form. For 6 months, he lived like a lone wolf, rough, right, how? Avoided humanity, searching ruined cities with his bare hands to look for signs of survivors. Meanwhile, Sun Rui was deeply unsettled because this suspicious rookie valued his own life above all else, deserted his post without authorization, and clearly kept secrets. The captain stepped right up to him and asked if he understood the gravity of his actions. Then she leaned in close and whispered quietly so the others wouldn't hear, "What is wrong with those hands of yours?" She demanded to know why he fabricated those lies and what his true purpose was. Suddenly, their conversation was cut short by a violent tremor. Captain Sun assumed it was just an earthquake, but how? Instantly recognized that dreadfully familiar vibration, leaping right out of his seat. He screamed at the captain to run. He omitted the terrifying detail that a massive wave of monsters was closing in. Captain Sun, however, was absolutely furious. How dare this impudent punk flee right in front of her? She charged forward, stopping him dead by slamming his face directly into the concrete floor. The brutal impact shattered the tiles, prompting her alarmed squad to beg their leader to calm down. Too late, the entire room began disintegrating as if a massive earthquake had struck, and the ceiling collapsed. Down they went, plunging deep beneath the surface, completely disoriented about their location or survival. Yan Hao was the first to wake up, realizing they had plummeted straight into the abyss. The captain ordered her squad to set up lights because it was pitch black. One private grumbled, convinced that the rookie was a total jinx who brought disaster wherever he went. Honestly, same. Once the lanterns finally flickered on and they could finally scan the area, they realized they had landed right in an underground labyrinth dug out by savage beasts. Scattered near their feet were the weapons that had tumbled down with them. The captain sharply commanded everyone to stay calm, maintain their formation, and remain hypervigilant. Right then, Yan Hao detected a faint breeze blowing from a dark side tunnel, hinting at a potential escape route. The nearby private cautiously inspected the cave entrance and confirmed a steady draft was blowing through, and just like that, thanks to Yan Hao, they found a potential exit because he clearly had a real talent for survival. Meanwhile, the private was so distracted by the breeze drifting from the passage that he completely missed the massive beast creeping up behind him. Right from the other side, Captain Sun instantly drew her blade, striking down the creature. Though it still managed to spray a vile stream of fluid, the soldier got incredibly lucky since that acid splashed just inches away. It was highly toxic, and even a single drop would be absolutely fatal. Captain Sun sternly warned them again that nobody moves a single inch without her direct command. Then, Captain Sun turned to Yan Hao, noting that he seemed to have a strange knack for dodging danger. Once they survived this mess, he was going to owe her a very thorough explanation. Yan Hao knew she had likely figured out his secret, even if she kept quiet. For now, she obviously had her own reasons for staying silent, but suddenly, just as they stepped out of the dungeon, a low rumble echoed through the air. Something massive was approaching. A swarm of monsters crawled out from the dark tunnels. Their numbers were far greater than before, completely blocking off any escape route. And surrounding the squad, Yan Hao knew they were in deep trouble. They fired their guns immediately, but the bullets barely scratched them, only slowing the horde down slightly. Captain Sun yelled for everyone to retreat, but she noticed that Yan Hao was falling behind. Strangely, Yan Hao saw that the terrifying swarm of insect monsters had suddenly frozen in place, completely halting their pursuit of the squad. Still, it was far too early to celebrate. Believe me, something far worse was coming. Sure enough, a massive lord-level beast emerged from the thick red mist. It was colossal and absolutely terrifying. Even the other monsters cowered. It greedily inhaled the crimson fog and grew stronger by the second. Worse yet, they soon realized a horrific truth that This beast was directly converting the mist into pure energy. Yan Hao quickly warned his team to stay back because this thing was on a whole different level. Captain Sun aimed and fired, landing a direct hit right on the giant creature's head. In retaliation, it unleashed a blast of red mist, and she immediately knew she could not dodge it in time, but out of nowhere, Yan Hao jumped right in front of her, raising his bare hand to completely block the devastating blow. Captain Sun stared in absolute shock. She did not even have time to ask how. Hao just told her he would explain later once they survived, though surviving this was still a very big question mark. This titan was unbelievably durable. And where the captain hit it, there was only a tiny, harmless scratch. It did absolutely nothing to slow it down. Captain Sun realized her strongest attack had failed. Did this young man actually stand a real chance? Against such a threat, Yan Hao finally stopped hiding his true power. It was out in the open, and he was fully ready to battle. This opponent was a true Lord-level boss. Just like the terrifying beast, he failed to defeat on his very first day here. But now Hao was vastly stronger. He wanted to see just how much more powerful he would become if he absorbed this creature. Still, he knew his target was built like an absolute fortress. Normal beasts would be dust by now, but this giant was a literal walking tank. The monstrous beast was not just defending itself either, as it fought back with deadly intent. Yet Hao quickly noticed one massive flaw. This giant monster was way too slow. The beast focused entirely on defense, which actually played right into his hands. Now the giant monster was nothing more than a slow, walking target. The soldiers kept firing at its back, hardly believing what they were seeing. Before this, everyone assumed Yan Hao was just a coward who always ran away. The squad figured the young guy was just absolutely terrified of dying. But the truth was, none of them had ever witnessed him in action. Now they desperately wanted to know his real identity. Watching him fight a beast with his bare hands made Captain Sun Rui suspect something far deeper. She wondered if he was a secret government experiment designed for war. It sounded crazy, especially since he could barely get through basic training. Still, Captain Sun was convinced he belonged to that black-budget project, because he had physically shielded her from the monster's devastating attack. Her deputy, Im Yunjai, had never heard of these experimental soldiers. He quickly realized that Captain Sun was keeping some massive secrets from him. She suspected that Hao had escaped a lab and infiltrated their unit. Deputy Im wondered if that chaotic red mist incident was also his doing. The captain admitted she was not sure, but she needed answers fast. Either way, this was highly classified information that nobody could ever repeat. They had to keep absolute silence about everything they witnessed today. Meanwhile, Hao kept trading blows, channeling the power of the red mist. The beast retaliated fiercely, forcing the young man to dodge in midair. Suddenly, an intense shockwave of red mist caught them both completely off guard. When Sun Rui finally opened her eyes, she was clutching her weapon. Thick smoke covered the battlefield, and a nearby soldier slowly woke up. He lay flat on the hard ground, absolutely unable to believe he was still breathing. Sitting up, the young private realized his life had been saved. Deputy Im had thrown himself over him, taking the entire blast. It was incredibly selfless for a mere patrolman. Deputy Im looked at his badly mangled leg and shrugged it off. Trading one leg for a life is a pretty good deal, he smiles. But the private is worried. The deputy needs his mobility to fight. He should not have sacrificed his body for a normal human. The deputy simply replies that he joined up to protect people, not slay beasts. He refuses to abandon anyone. Talk about a true leader, then Hao is sent flying. He crashes hard through the room. He finally stops, slamming heavily against a solid wall as his vision blurs. He can feel the red mist energy completely draining, making it nearly impossible to hold on. His partial beast form begins slipping away. Now he truly understands the terrifying weight of a Lord-class monster. He needs to dig deep and somehow find more power to survive. Suddenly, a massive explosion detonates right on top of the beast's head. The monster roars in agony. Hao looks up and sees Captain Sun. She had entered the fray, unleashing a barrage of heavy gunfire. Yan Hao cannot die here, she shouts, because he still has a lot of explaining to do when this is over. The prior head wound meant nothing, the beast was. It laughed mockingly, its power surged, more red mist poured out of nearby caves, channeling the fog for extra power. This energy healed its injuries. Everyone watched in sheer horror as the creature funneled the crimson fog directly into the open, bleeding wounds. The flesh rapidly knitted together. It was ready. If this continued, the beast would recover entirely. The captain realized this sudden red mist at their forward base was definitely caused by this monster. She knew they could not defeat it. They had to retreat as fast as possible while they still had a fighting chance. But Yan Hao refused. He insisted the beast had to die now. This terrifying crimson fog was actually the source of his own power. Since it remained temporarily immobilized, they had to strike immediately. But the female commander worried he would surely die if they failed. Yan Hao calmly replied that he had faced death countless times already. One more reckless gamble would not change his path. Sun Rui understood his dangerous logic. She agreed, knowing they had one shot. The captain promised to unleash all her remaining energy to help him penetrate the thick head armor. Then he had to destroy the brain. That was their only hope. Taking position, the young woman took aim. She peered intently through the advanced scope of her high-powered sniper rifle. She pulled the trigger on command. Direct hit, the armored skull instantly cracked open. Right on cue, Yan Hao leaped into action. Landing squarely on the head, he drove his strike straight inside. Blood-curdling, agonizing shrieks tore through the quiet battlefield. The massive monster began thrashing violently in its final death throes. Their desperate strategy worked. With a loud blast, the creature's head shattered into pieces, sending the young warrior flying backward from impact. The captain ignored the smoke and rushed over to check on him. He was totally out cold, lying motionless on the charred ground. Sun Rui knelt beside his limp form, her heart pounding with worry. Unzipping his military jacket to help him breathe, she suddenly spotted something. In his hand, a strange glowing crystal began to behave very oddly. It slowly dissolved directly into his chest while he remained fast asleep. Yan Hao woke up in a dark, empty space. Mist swirled. It felt like he was observing his own cells under a microscope. He assumed he was dead and drifting away into another quiet dimension. Then he noticed a glowing DNA strand and a purple nucleus floating. He stared at the bizarre, spinning objects. He realized what they were. This was the exact core from the body of that giant beast. Though it seemed like a pure energy mass, it acted completely alive. He was clutching it earlier, yet now it rested deep inside his chest. Suddenly, the core began pulling in the surrounding mist. He watched closely. He realized the crystal could safely store all this chaotic, mutant energy, storing it inside his own body if he absorbed even more mist. And transformed into a stronger beast, he would never fear losing his self-control again. This crystal likely has a limited capacity. If the flow of red mist doesn't stop, it will definitely shatter. Yan Hao realized the beast he had been fighting consumed massive amounts of red mist. If he could absorb it, his best move was to gather it all in one secure place. Meanwhile, as the young man lay in his hospital bed, red mist was leaking from his chest. Suddenly, he snapped awake and sat upright, feeling the heavy red mist respond directly to his hand. Right then, the door to his hospital room swung open, and Captain Sun Rui appeared in the doorway, sensing danger. The youth was forced to react instantly, launching into a somersault backward over His head, he knew there was absolutely no way to block this attack, so he had to do everything possible to avoid hurting the captain. He redirected the blast straight toward the window, ensuring the shockwave spared his visitor. A few minutes before this, a soldier had approached the captain to report on the condition of Adjutant Emma's leg. Still, she believed every soldier was fully prepared for battlefield injuries, so the soldier should never blame himself. The captain's deputy then asked how Yan Hao's recovery was going. The man admitted he had never heard of test subjects before. Sun Rui countered that it was top secret information, so the officer should focus entirely on his own leg and ignore the rest. Sun Rui had already sent a transfer request to headquarters to have him transferred to a rear unit where he could finally find some rest. However, the deputy threatened to report everything directly to Chief of Staff Sun Lion, who was her father, meaning the chief would decide his fate. This completely infuriated Sun Rui, who snapped that she was the adjutant's direct commander, and from that moment on, his access to comms was suspended. He must stay in his hospital bed and not go anywhere. After finishing her tense visit with her subordinate, the captain went to check on Yan Hao, who was also undergoing treatment nearby. Standing right outside the young man's hospital ward, the captain left a soldier on guard at the entrance, ordering him to let nobody in without her direct permission. The next moment, she swung open the hospital door and was nearly blasted back by a wild surge of red mist. Yan Hao looked absolutely terrified, not expecting to see the captain, and still unable to control his wild new power. Sun Rui ducked just in time as the blast sailed over her, blowing the door straight into the corridor. The guard survived, though he was thrown by the massive shockwave. The blast itself was so violent that it ripped through multiple buildings before fading away. Sitting in his quarters, Adjutant Emma realized that the abandoned building had been blown right through, and knew this was Yan Hao's doing. The officer wanted to know how long Captain Sun Rui could keep this quiet. The anxious man couldn't understand why endless trouble kept falling directly on him. He was terrified and didn't want to die. Staring at the wreckage, Sun Rui realized that the young man had mastered the technique of the beast they had fought. Now she wanted to know Yan Hao could use monster abilities directly, completely without any combat gear. The two had a serious talk ahead, so they headed up to the hospital roof where no one could disturb them. Up there, Captain Sun realized he could do more than just absorb monster cores. He copied their powers, and that was not all. The young man could even store the toxic red mist right inside his own body. Plus, the crystal structure inside him was constantly regenerating itself. The captain weighed this, knowing his powers were perfect for hunting monsters. But while Hao confirmed his massive boost in strength, a dark fear lingered. He was terrified that he might slowly lose control and turn into a beast. It ate at him. He was completely lost. He honestly did not know if he could even call himself a human anymore. Captain Sun looked at him and said he was unique, a complete one of one. Whether he was a man or a monster depended entirely on how he used his strength. But here is the thing, a power like this is never just a simple gift. It is a double-edged sword, leaving Hao with exactly two choices ahead of him. Option 1, join the Burning Blood Squad as Captain Sun Rui's candidate. Or he gets labeled as a threat and hunted down like a wild beast. When the alternative is getting wiped out, that is not much of a choice. Captain Sun admitted she would not hurt him now, but the military definitely could. If the city high-ups decided he was a threat, they would put him down. It would be absolute suicide for Hao to try fighting the army and monsters alone. But joining her squad changes the game. It gives him a powerful shield. He will get military protection, vital resources, and classified intelligence. But Hao is far from naive. He knows there is no such thing as a free lunch. Taking in an unstable, overpowered wildcard makes absolutely zero sense. He knew Captain Sun had to have some hidden motive of her own. Smiling, she admitted he was sharp and that she absolutely needed his unique talents. Assuring him they were on the same side, she pulled out a physical photo. She slid the photo over, telling him to consider it a done deal. He froze. How did she get that photo? He always kept it tucked away. Sun Rui warned him never to underestimate her. She could unearth his entire history in a second, but if he signed up. She promised to unleash her elite intelligence network to locate his missing sister. Hao knew that searching for her on his own was a dead end. He was running blind, but military clearance would unlock doors he could never reach. Deciding to take the leap, Yan Hao agreed to the deal under one condition. If she needed his monstrous power that badly, he wanted one final thing. He asked for a massive pay raise. After all, finding his sister is not cheap. Every single penny he ever made had already been spent on the search. The captain smirked, officially addressing the former private by his new title. She welcomed him as a candidate, locking in his salary at the highest bracket. All that was left now was to go and sign the official paperwork. Giving a crisp salute, Hao headed to the patrol department to wrap things up. As he walked out, Captain Sun noted she already paid off his outstanding debts. He was off the hook for the hospital damage. Still, he shouldn't celebrate too early. It was getting deducted from his pay. Just then, a military ride pulled up. Right outside the Kishi City Patrol headquarters, a soldier stepped out, a familiar face. He used to patrol with Hao and was now trying to transfer too. He mentioned joining the special unit, claiming Captain Sun was highly impressed with him. Sure, he would only be in the rear detachment, but it beat staying here. At least they could watch each other's backs on the new team. Yan Hao stared at the friendly guy, but had absolutely no idea who he was. He never bothered remembering names before. Other people simply did not matter to him. Suddenly, the soldier waved. He had just spotted Captain Jia walking nearby. The captain had actually survived that brutal red mist attack completely intact. Well, almost. He was currently in a heavy cast, leaning heavily on a crutch. A crowd of arrogant young punks quickly surrounded him, blocking his path. One of them sneered, reminding Jia how he once slapped him over a woman. Now that the captain lost his backing, he wanted payback for his ruined reputation. Zhang Shi suddenly lashed out, kicking the crutch right out of Jia's hand. A loyal patrol soldier rushed forward to defend his fallen captain. But before he could do anything, the other thugs grabbed him. The city garrison soldiers pinned him down while their commander laughed. The trash talked down to the wounded captain, ordering him to crawl. He demanded Jia kneel and lick the mud off his boots, or else. If he refused, they would break the patrol soldiers' limbs right there. Captain Jia knew he had no choice, so he slowly began to kneel. But at the last second, Yan Hao caught him, stopping his descent. He gently told the captain there was no need to lower himself like this. Jia had covered for him and treated him well in the past. It was finally Hao's turn to repay the favor. He turned to the crowd. He warned them touch Captain Jia, and he would personally break their bones and burn them like firewood. Naturally, the garrison punks lost their minds. They charged at Hao, screaming and expecting an easy beatdown. Oh, they are about to learn a very painful lesson. Hao calmly dismantles them. The first attacker took a devastating kick to the jaw. The next guy followed. Hao caught him with a brutal elbow strike, knocking him out cold. The rest of the squad tried to jump in, but got scattered instantly. He casually swept them aside with effortless, lightning-fast punches. Now the floor was covered in groaning city garrison soldiers. Their captain stood there in absolute shock, completely frozen in disbelief. He wiped out his entire squad in under 4 seconds. Zhang Shi drew his pistol. He screamed that patrol trash had no right to defy the garrison. He fired several times, but Hao dodged every single bullet easily. Hao snatched the pistol away, mocking how incredibly slow it was. He casually crushed the weapon and tossed it aside like actual garbage. This clown was not even in the same leg as Captain Sun. Sun Rui actually knew how to handle a weapon. Desperate, the commander drew a knife. But that blade was completely useless. Yan Hao grabbed him by the throat, lifting him up. Hao grabs his outstretched arm, refusing to forget how this man just tried to force Captain Jia all the way down onto his knees. Zhang Shi realizes right away that his opponent is absurdly strong. Terrified, the garrison commander desperately tries to calm him down. But Yan Hao slams him into the concrete, telling him it is his turn to grovel. Hao slowly scans the room, and not a single soul dares to step forward. The crowd stands frozen in absolute shock after watching him easily dodge a live bullet and crush a steel pistol barehanded, yet Hao ignores them. He is too busy examining his own body, which feels completely reborn. His power is completely off the charts now. The terrified garrison soldiers scramble away, and Hao retrieves the captain's crutch. His patrol partner is stunned, calling him a literal god of war. Hao just shrugs. Meanwhile, Captain Jia hobbles forward to thank him for saving his life, but the young man insists he only paid back a debt to the kind mentor who has always watched over him during patrol. Still, the captain worries the humiliated commander will seek petty revenge. But there is really no need to worry about that anymore, because Yan Hao is officially joining the elite special unit, and the regular army cannot touch him. Their new temporary headquarters is situated right in the city center. Hao reports to Captain Song Rui, completing all his official transfer paperwork. She has already personally requested him for her elite combat squad. With high command quickly approving the move, he is officially in. But the captain tells him not to get too comfortable just yet. To earn a real spot in her unit, he must pass a brutal trial. Hao must travel directly to the headquarters in Hukan City to take the combat division's entrance exams. Still, Song Rui is incredibly confident. With his insane physical abilities, the young man should easily pass. Hao confidently promises to set a historic new record. The next morning, their military transport arrives in Hukan. This legendary city is the absolute capital of all the special units. It is also home to the prestigious Fiery Blood headquarters. Official fighters here are at least D-class warriors, which is pretty insane. Hao is skeptical because his patrol buddy is a total weakling. How will his friend survive the selection if his only skill is taking hits? Song Rui explains that his buddy joined the support squad, not combat, meaning he does not need to go through the brutal combat selection. Still, the support unit often fights right alongside the frontline combatants. But first, the recruits have to study their mandatory combat theory. Anyone who can use superpowers is officially classified as a warrior. Their overall combat effectiveness is split into 6 distinct ranks. These ranks are determined by raw physical strength and sheer endurance. The monsters they fight are categorized in a similar way. Lower-level threats are hounds and scouts, while the heavy hitters are lords. Titans are much tougher, combining multiple elemental powers in battle. But the ultimate, most terrifying nightmares are the disaster-class monsters. It is practically impossible to defeat them. Typically, a basic warrior can defeat a scout-level monster, while a Class D warrior handles standard ones. Class B and C warriors are equal in strength to Lord-level monsters, and a Class A warrior is equal to a giant-level monster. Only a Class S warrior can face a catastrophe-level monster. Rank is also heavily influenced by the degree of compatibility with a monster core, something Hao knew absolutely nothing about. It turns out that in this world only mutated monsters from the red mist possess superpowers, while human warriors can only activate abilities using core-powered weapons, meaning through compatibility with monster cores, physical form, talent, and luck. All of these factors influence. Sun Rui explained that the higher the compatibility, the greater and more powerful the abilities that can be awakened in each specific warrior. But if the core is completely incompatible, The warrior is assigned an E rank. Suddenly, the convoy comes to a halt. Because the road is blocked by armed men who ask them to wait a moment and apologize for the inconvenience, Captain Sun cannot understand how these people dare to stop a special unit, but they reply they are also carrying out official duties, leaving them with no other choice. Several expensive cars drive by, and the captain realizes that bigwigs from the Green Vine Corporation have arrived for the fiery blood selection. Something is definitely off. About this, however, in the end, everyone makes it to the entrance exam. Sight, fiery blood is humanity's most reliable pillar and at the same time the special unit's sharpest blade. The chief examiner of fiery blood is a Class A warrior. He announces that regardless of connections or background, only local rules apply here. It is impossible to pass this selection through backroom deals or bribes, and no matter who the applicant is, they will achieve nothing without true strength. They must forget about staying in fiery blood. The first trial is a physical fitness test. The examiner gives the signal. He must run 100 meters. While carrying a 50-kilogram load, Hao handles it easily. Next is the kettlebell press with electromagnetic assistance, where he lifts 500 kilograms with one hand. Next is the striking power test, but the force measuring device turns out to be shattered and the data cannot be recorded. 10 minutes after the trial begins, Yan Hao reports to the chief examiner that he has successfully completed all the trials. Lin Yuxing checks the records and confirms completion, awarding the young man a score of 198 points. It is an unbelievable record because the previous rookie high was only 140 points. The other candidates think this rookie must be cheating. Zhang Jin is the younger brother of the city garrison commander. He is also shocked by such a massive gap in scores, refusing to believe in their integrity. The chief examiner replies that he has personally supervised every single stage and that the entire exam is caught on video. So there is absolutely no reason to suspect favoritism or lying. Zhang Jin immediately backtracks, claiming he would never dare suspect the examiner of anything before asking the super rookie for his name, but upon learning that he cornered by Yan Hao, Zhang Jin claimed he just wanted to say hello to a fellow townsman, but in secret he was plotting revenge against this rising upstart. The bitter insult his brother suffered was impossible to forget, a total humiliation. Meanwhile, Yan Hao immediately put together the family connection between this hostile stranger and the powerful city garrison commander. The chief examiner stepped in, identifying the cocky newcomer as Zhang Jin, son of the chief of the Kishi city guard. Yan Hao coldly replied that they were not acquainted. Right then, Hao realized the entire city guard was rotten to the core. Soon, the chief examiner Lin Yongxing stepped up to announce the physical fitness test scores. He went down the list, reading off every candidate's final points. And get this, at the very top, the first-place champion was announced. Yan Hao, no one saw that coming. Watching from the crowd was Jin Ying, a sharp research assistant from the Technical Intelligence Bureau. She had originally joined the trials just for fun, but this absurdly strong newcomer caught her eye. Now she was determined to study him closely. That evening, Zhang Jin sat in his private dorm room, venting his fury over a secure video call. He was supposed to easily dominate. Nobody expected two literal monsters to show up so suddenly. Honestly, if it were not for his powerful older brother pulling strings inside the elite Green Vine faction, Zhang Jin would never have even qualified for these trials. The men on the screen warned him that he had exactly one shot at this, and failure was not an option. He replied that for his brother's sake, he would absolutely make it into fire blood. The next morning, the beast core testing began. It was a remarkably simple setup. Just wear a bracelet. The chief examiner stepped up and demonstrated the process to the candidates. After that, a glowing beast core was slotted into the bracelet to begin the scan. Anyone whose sync rate with the core fell below 40%, instant disqualification, no second chances for them. To keep everyone informed, the examiner took a moment to explain the science behind these mysterious beast cores. Only monsters ranked hunting hound or higher can produce them. Naturally, the deadlier the mutated beast, the more powerful the core left behind. When a hunter fuses one of these cores into a specialized weapon, they can actually wield the exact same abilities as the nightmares themselves. But here is the catch: a warrior's synchronization rate with a beast core is entirely unique, based on this affinity and their own raw talent. Completely different combat powers will awaken. Now, these testing bracelets are just basic primitive tools. They only measure your raw sync rate, granting no actual abilities. Only after officially joining the elite Fire Blood Special Forces will they receive real cores and custom armaments. With that, the compatibility test officially kicks off. One by one, the nervous hopefuls step forward and slide on the device. Instantly, their synchronization scores flash onto the massive monitors, and anyone falling short of the mark is immediately kicked out. One hopeful is completely devastated. He absolutely crushed the physical exams earlier, but his total lack of innate affinity forces him to pack his bags. Fortunately, the next recruit has much better luck, scraping by with 56%. To qualify for the unit, next up was Zhang Jin. The young man was ready. Completely relaxed, Jiang Jin steps up to the table and slides on the bracelet, ready to insert the beast core. What happens next shocks everyone. His compatibility rating hits a mind-blowing 60%, a number nobody has ever seen. Not even in previous years. To them, a new elite powerhouse has emerged. Jiang Jin smirks, utterly thrilled. He looks at the other candidates like they are just a bunch of useless nobodies compared to his genius. Nearby, Jin Ying approaches Yan Hao. She admits she has never heard of a guy as strong as him. She explains that she works for the Technical Intelligence Bureau and knows absolutely everyone, yet she cannot understand how a guy like Yan Hao managed to slip completely off her radar. She immediately realizes that the strange spikes in the red mist over Kishi City are linked to him. Yan Hao immediately plays dumb, trying his best to change the subject. He claims he has absolutely no clue what she is talking about. But Jin Ying just smiles. It does not matter if he denies it, because he has seriously piqued her interest. Yan Hao grins back at her, calling her Miss Know-It-All, before asking if he can get some answers of his own. Jin Ying agrees, promising to tell him everything he wants to know if his score beats hers. If he wins, she will spill absolutely every secret. Just then, she gets called up for her test, with a confident smile. Jin Ying walks up to grab the bracelet, leaving Yan Hao thoroughly intrigued. She is incredibly confident. Turning to the crowd, she boldly announces that she is going to shatter the record. Jiang Jin scoffs, but Yan Hao watches closely. He wants to see if her actual strength matches her massive ego. And then, boom, the red-haired beauty pulls off a mind-blowing 78% compatibility rate. The entire room goes dead silent in disbelief. A score like that is completely unprecedented in their history. People suspect a glitch, but Jin Ying is thrilled to have shattered Jiang Jin's record just like she promised. Jiang Jin is absolutely livid. Not only is he stressing over Yan Hao, but now this girl has outclassed him too. Yan Hao is up last. He realizes she is definitely the real deal. She knows too much, so he must win to get those answers. To find his missing sister, Yan Hao cannot afford to lose here. He warns the crowd to watch carefully, based on Captain Sun's estimate. His battle rank should be Class C at minimum. He looks down at the beast core. It is identical to the one he absorbed before. He inserts it into the device, eager to find out what his true level of compatibility really is. Instantly, the sensors display Class C, leaving the other recruits completely stunned. They realize this rookie holds the strength of an elite squad commander. But suddenly, the entire testing system begins to glitch and spark. The compatibility cannot be calculated, and the machine displays a massive error. Jiang Jin laughs maliciously, calling Yan Hao a fake who can only talk big. He sneers that even the beast core rejected a weakling like him. Yan Hao completely ignores the idiot. He does not care about his petty insults. Instead, he wonders why the device could not read his stats. Suddenly, a strange change on his bracelet catches his eye. That is because Yan Hao was already devouring the raw beast energy. His body was taking it by absolute force without asking. Watching this, Jin Ying was totally thrilled. She had never seen a 0% compatibility rating before. Even in the worst cases, they always had at least 1%. The girl immediately sat down at her computer to research the phenomenon. She had to document this incredible data, knowing her supervisor would be absolutely thrilled with the news. Meanwhile, Zhang Jin pointed at Yan Hao, accusing him of stealing the beast core because it completely vanished from sight. Instructor Lin Yusheng demanded that the young man raise his hand to show both the bracelet and the core. Yan Hao reluctantly held up his wrist, but the device was completely empty. The young hunter played dumb, acting like he had no idea what happened. At least that was his story for the examiners. He needed an excuse. And fast, or else these scientists would treat him like a lab rat. So he took a massive gamble by faking a sudden beast transformation. He raised his arm high, pretending the core had mutated his entire body. Crimson energy flared wildly. Instantly, Lin Yusheng ordered his team to stand down and keep their distance, but Jin Ying could not take her eyes off the spectacle, completely mesmerized by the raw power overflowing from him. Everyone else was in absolute panic. Some feared he was mutating into a mindless monster right before their eyes, while the instructor reached for his weapon. Jin Ying stepped forward, calmly asking Yan Hao if he could hear her. When Yan Hao answered back perfectly fine, the instructor froze in disbelief. The kid was speaking. He had not lost his mind to the mutation. Playing innocent, Yan Hao claimed it must be some weird ability of the core itself. It just fused into his skin on its own, and then this happened. Jin Ying smiled, telling him not to worry. It was a beast morph. And though she had never witnessed this before, it was incredibly rare. A sheer stroke of luck, even the instructor had to agree. He had never seen a recruit heal instantly after a partial beastification. Now Yan Hao looked entirely normal again. This was a legendary anomaly. But Hao only cared about talking to the mysterious girl. Who was she, and how did she know so much about these monster cores? The head examiner stepped in, explaining that Jin Ying was a top researcher, specifically at the Intelligence Bureau. Plus, her father was a high-ranking general who ran the entire military scientific division. Talk about a powerhouse. Jin Ying pouted, annoyed that the examiner had ruined her cool, mysterious vibe. With the secrets out, the commander finally asked Yan Hao to return the military's beast core so they could officially wrap up the testing. But Yan Hao apologized. He could not hand it back even if he wanted to, because it was now part of him. Zhang Jin boiled with pure rage hearing that the core was gone forever. The snitch realized he had to report this to his secret backers. At Green Vine right away, Yan Hao was the ultimate lab rat. Soon, the military sent every single recruit to isolation for medical screening. They threw Yan Hao straight into an X-ray machine, but little did. A beast core growing inside a human, and it was already fully fused. It was impossible to extract. Director Jin An-cheng could only stare in shock. With his daughter Jin Ying and his staff, he studied the examination results. The results were clear. This mysterious kid required a serious, deep investigation. There was no doubt about it. Yan Hao harbored many more secrets. Suddenly, the leadership of Burning Blood arrived at the department's laboratory. They wanted answers. Who was this recruit, and what was he hiding? Director Jin tried to stall. He quickly tried to redirect the conversation. He asked why Burning Blood rejected candidates with compatibility under 40%. But Lieutenant General Sun Lin, the chief of staff, cut him off. He barked at the director to stop wasting time and explain the situation immediately. Entering the lab, Director Jin explained that he actually co-developed this testing equipment. Built alongside Green Vine, this device was guaranteed to be highly accurate. This meant one thing: Yan Hao's compatibility was definitely not zero. Jin Ying was dying of curiosity. She begged her father to speak faster. Director Jin An-cheng revealed that the testing machine had completely glitched out. The compatibility was unprecedented. Yan Hao's stats were off the charts. He shattered the theoretical maximum limit by over 100%. Hearing this, General Song left the laboratory, bringing Instructor Lin with him. Meanwhile, the crystal core inside the young man was shifting from black to crimson. This sudden change was triggered by devouring a low-tier beast core. Normally, devouring a Lord-level creature would unlock a powerful new ability. But this time, swallowing a weak core did not grant him anything. Instead, his crystal core simply grew stronger, meaning his potential is limitless. The stronger his prey, the more powerful Yan Hao becomes after devouring it. If he keeps devouring, his evolution will never stop. Talk about a major cheat code. Meanwhile, the elite Burning Blood Squad was stationed in a luxurious building. Captain Sun Rui was confused. What complaints could they possibly have against her? After all, she was the one who scouted and brought Yan Hao in. But Commander Sun Lin, her father, demanded she respect the chain of command. He believed she was being far too protective of this new recruit. But Sun Rui stood her ground, arguing she had already promised the recruit. She would take him into her unit, refusing to break her word as a soldier. But Commander Sun Lin was adamant. His daughter's request was flatly denied. A soldier's honor belongs to the country, not to individuals, he firmly declared. Furthermore, Yan Hao was already assigned to Lin Yongxing's unit. That decision was final. The chief of staff made it very clear. Even as a squad commander, she couldn't steal from Lin Yongxing. She needed to focus on her own duties instead of meddling in other matters. Sun Rui knew her father's stubborn nature. She decided to find another way. Meanwhile, Yan Hao was relaxing in the recreation room of the Burning Blood camp. A loud scream shattered the quiet. Jin Ying burst into the room. She announced that a massive new beast lair had just been discovered. Recruits from Burning Blood were being deployed on a vital reconnaissance mission. And she had already worked out a special deal with Instructor Lin. They had teamed up, making Hao a frontline fighter under leader Lin Yuxing in the special unit. The Burning Blood Special Squad was ordered to scout ahead. They had to assess the threat level, but remain on absolute high alert. Even inside a low-level lair, anything can happen because of that creepy red mist. Jin Ying, a senior researcher from the Technical Bureau, was also on this squad. Gathering data was her specialty. Soon, the military convoy rolled out. Convoy vehicles rolled out, dealing with a threat system of 4 tiers. Their target today was classified as a highly dangerous hive type. This specific nest had a simple layout but incredibly complex internal tunnels. Massive swarms of aggressive worker bees made this place lethal. Alongside a small squad of giant fighter bees armed with deadly, razor-sharp stingers. Suddenly, the driver spotted something blocking the road ahead. He slowed the truck down, trying to make out what was happening up ahead. Jin Ying chimed in, warning him that the bees here were incredibly tough. Hao peered out the window. High in the air, floating rocks seemed to drift. Looking closer, he realized those massive objects were actually giant iron bees. Exactly as she warned, this iron species could not be compared to normal bugs. The former patrolman immediately realized how dangerous the situation was. They needed to turn around and get out of there. They tried to turn the vehicle back, but a massive rain of iron stingers struck. Jin Ying screamed. Their light armor wouldn't withstand this heavy barrage. Hao decided this was the perfect moment to test his new physical abilities. He ripped the car door completely off, preparing to fight the swarm. Within seconds, their military vehicle looked exactly like a giant metal pincushion. Hao used those heavy broken doors as cover, slightly modifying their shape. He yelled at his teammates to stay down and defend. The bee stingers were completely useless against his custom defense. The driver stared in shock, unable to understand how Hao modified that metal. Jin Ying explained that it was a physical shift from absorbing the beast core. She originally believed his unique abilities could only transform his own physical body. But it turned out he can actually project this morphing power onto objects, meaning he can weaponize absolutely anything now that is incredibly overpowered. She quickly logged this data. Suddenly, green projectiles fired. They were highly destructive, easily punching right through normal shields. Hao looked around, desperate to find where they came from. He finally located the shooter and yelled for everyone to cover. Jin Ying and the driver hid behind a boulder near a soldier. The nearby soldier had a flamethrower, knowing these beasts absolutely hated fire. But in a split second, a green sting struck his heavy equipment. The fuel tank exploded, completely incinerating the poor soldier on the spot. It was brutal. Hao yelled for Jin Ying to identify them. She analyzed the data, realizing it came from a hound queen. Her tail stinger contained a toxic acid that easily corroded rank C armor. As a rank A hunter, her presence meant this lair was definitely not low-level. Hao ordered his comrades to fall back while he went to kill the queen. Jin Ying was ready to fight, a wind elementalist showing off her basic skills. She whips up a powerful whirlwind, completely blocking the attacking bees. This lets Hao slip away from the battlefield, slowly tracking down the queen. He finally pinpoints her hiding spot and closes in on the target. The beast is massive, armed with razor-sharp claws and a deadly stinger. Hao crushes a pair of iron doors and twists them into a tight spiral. It forms a jagged iron spear, the perfect weapon to match the monsters. He stands his ground against the swarm, then hurls the heavy metal spear forward. Direct hit, the metal spear pierces her, yet she barely even flinches. Jin Ying cannot believe a simple hound-tier monster can be this durable. Panic sets in, an alarming realization suddenly flashes in her mind. She screams at Hao to keep that queen grounded no matter what. Otherwise, she easily reaches the terrifying Lord Tyr. He is running on empty, unable to move without absorbing red mist. Knowing about the queen, he would have saved his power. Jin Ying jokes that he better not play dead right now. Otherwise, she will have to give him chest compressions, forcing Hao to stand up. He mutters that he has no interest in raising other people's kids, clearly feeling better. She hands him a chocolate bar, telling him to take a quick breather. He declines, since his exhaustion has nothing to do with being hungry. Just then, backup finally arrives to check on them and pitch camp. After a quick rest to recover, Hao and Jin Ying head back out. They approach the very target they originally set out to investigate. Pulling out a sensor, she checks the concentration of red mist around them. The levels are safe enough for them to enter wearing protective suits. They decide not to wait for backup since the queen is wounded. This is their best shot to gather data and finish the job. Danger rises. Honestly, the situation is reaching a whole new level. Meanwhile, a tense discussion is unfolding deep inside the Special Forces headquarters. The high-ranking officers are debating fiercely in the Chief of Staff's office. Song Lin points out that the leadership is heavily divided over the situation. Half of them want Hao on the front lines, while the others want him dissected. The chief orders Lin Yongsan to keep a close eye on the boy. He is too unique. Suddenly, a secretary bursts into the room. An urgent summons requires Lin Yongsan to leave the office immediately. He receives word that the threat level of the targeted nest is skyrocketing. It has jumped from low to high risk right as they entered. Hao and Jin Ying are already deep inside, but the chief remains perfectly calm. He knows Jin Ying is incredibly sharp beneath her playful exterior. She never takes reckless risks without some kind of backup plan in mind. He immediately orders the closest Burning Blood squad to move out and support them. Captain Song-rui's elite unit is also deployed to the scene right away. They must guarantee the safety of Jin Ying and Hao at all costs. At that exact moment, the newly discharged Deputy Commander Yang Zhai steps inside. He is back from the hospital, ready to rejoin the operation. The Chief of Staff decided to send the young man straight to his daughter's squad for this mission. Song Ling ordered Lin Yangzhai to head out and report for duty immediately. He was to serve directly as the new assistant to Captain Song-rui. The brothers highly suspected that the chief had pulled these exact same strings once before. But the Chief of Staff had absolutely no intention of explaining himself to them. He could not understand why his daughter kept worrying about Yan Hao. All he could do was assign a trustworthy soldier to keep her safe. Meanwhile, Hao crept deeper into the nest, counting on their specialized combat suits. The gear was built to seal out the deadly red mist around them. Now they just had to hope their luck would hold out. Jin Ying kept scanning the energy levels, but the numbers barely budged. If that queen bee reached Lord Tyr, clearing this hive would become a nightmare. Suddenly, Hao threw his hand up and signaled for his partner to freeze. An instant later, the stone wall shattered and a massive creature burst through. A mutated, iron-bellied queen loomed over them, her toxic stinger ready to strike. And honestly, she looked way more terrifying than any normal mutant. Her massive size and fierce mandibles meant she had definitely hit Lord Tyr. Jin Ying's worst fears were true, the beast had evolved, but how? There was barely any red mist here, not nearly enough to feed this growth. Even the ordinary scout bees around her had somehow powered up and evolved. You can feel the tension rising as she quickly checks her sensors again. The toxicity was at critical levels, yet her scanner had stayed silent. Suddenly, her strength gave out completely, and she collapsed to her knees. Their protective suits were failing, letting the toxic mist seep right inside. This was sabotage. Some insider within Burning Blood had to be a traitor. Hao knew he could not fight off the swarm and protect Jin Ying. He grabbed her hand, urging her that they had to retreat immediately. After complaining about the lack of energy earlier, now it was everywhere. But keeping Jin Ying safe came first, so he quickly cleared a small, hidden alcove. He placed her inside the dry, sheltered spot to keep her safe. He told her to stay put and call headquarters for backup gear. Jin Ying nodded, telling him she could manage to make the connection. She promised to upload the scan data and warn them about the evolved queen. As Hao prepared to face the swarm, she looked at him with desperate eyes. She warned him that if he did not return, she would never let him rest in peace. Yan Hao just smiled confidently, telling her there was absolutely nothing to fear. He was definitely coming back. He had grown far too strong to lose now. He swore an oath to protect her, just like the promise he made his sister. Sizing up the massive swarm of scouts and the Lord Tyr Queen, he refused to fail. It was time to charge up the heavy dominant beetle energy weapon. With the leftover red energy, he only had power for one single shot. There was zero room for error. He took a deep breath, focusing every ounce of his remaining willpower. Then Hao unleashed a massive crimson blast directly toward the giant queen. The shockwave ripped through the cavern, engulfing the entire chamber in thick smoke. Thick smoke everywhere. Hao had no clue if his strike landed. He noticed that creepy red mist gathering near him again. It was pooling near his feet, completely swallowing the area in a bloody haze. Out of the fog, countless monstrous bees began to glow. Nearby, Jin Ying remained hidden. Safe in cover, she dismantled her analyzer and realized someone had sabotaged it. Working quickly, the girl fixed the device to measure the dense mist. Device on, instantly, it began screaming out frantic danger warnings. The red mist concentration was completely off the charts. It was double the safe limit. Right then, a massive explosion shook the air. Hao had just unleashed a devastating blast directly at the queen bee. The shockwave lightly grazed Jin Ying, making her look toward the source. She knew where it came from, but seeing anything through this fog was impossible. Feeding on the red mist, these bees were evolving at terrifying speed. Even the weakest scout bees were suddenly transforming into deadly high-level beasts. They grew unchecked. Hao was completely baffled by all of this. The more bees he tore through, the stronger the remaining ones became. Worse, despite being surrounded by energy, he couldn't absorb it fast enough. His stamina was bottoming out just as the queen bee lunged at him. A sharp stinger lunged. Hao was running on absolute fumes. Watching from afar, Jin Ying realized things had gone horribly off script. Then she spotted something terrifying, dark infection marks spreading across Hao's neck. His hazmat suit was compromised, exposing him directly to the toxic red mist. The toxicity levels in his blood were skyrocketing. He was about to lose his mind. Talk about a worst-case scenario. Jin Ying had to step in right now. She quickly prepped an air cannon and aimed it right at the swarm. A massive spiral of fresh air surged around Hao, keeping him somewhat conscious. It kept the suffocating fog at bay. Once the clean air reached Hao, Jin Ying triggered a brilliant, targeted explosion. Perfect hit, but that created a brand new nightmare. With the red mist cleared, Hao was suddenly cut off from his power source. Seizing the opening, the bees swarmed in with their deadly stingers. He barely managed to throw up a defense barrier in the nick of time. His hands froze, the deadly venom completely paralyzed his movements. Out of nowhere, Adjutant Lin rushed in at a breakneck speed. The venomous stinger pierced Lin's back. Thankfully, his physical enhancement ability saved him from immediate death. Gritting his teeth through the pain, Lin barked out that the fight wasn't over yet. Just then, the backup squad arrived, unleashing massive electromagnetic pulses. The blasts vaporized the bees as Captain Sun Rui joined the fray. Brandishing her weapon, she arrived just in time. Hao stared at her in complete disbelief. He gasped out, "Why are you here?" It turned out headquarters sent backup. They were ordered to rescue the Nest research team at all costs. But there was no time for small talk. It was back to business. The captain ordered her squad to eliminate every single bug. Group A pushed forward. They held the line at the front, blocking the main route completely. Raining down endless fire, Group B covered the mid-range. Meanwhile, Adjutant Lin and Yan Hao were ordered to retreat to the rear. The squad listened closely to their captain and carried out her orders without hesitation. But right then, the Queen Bee readied her deadly stinger. Her speed was absolutely terrifying, and the soldiers had no time to react. That stinger was locked onto Hao's back. Captain Sun Rui screamed for them not to look back and just run as fast as possible. Facing a terrifying ruler-level monster, she had no choice but to unleash a secret technique. It was a first-stage electromagnetic strike, generating a high-voltage electromagnetic field. She launched a targeted strike. The blast paralyzed and completely destroyed everything in its path. Everyone saw that her strike had landed dead on the queen bee, but it soon became clear that the master level monster was still standing. As she surged upward, they all hoped she wouldn't fly too far. For now, they had to clear the nearby swarm. Hao watched Captain Sun in action, realizing she was indeed incredibly powerful. Adjutant Lin noted that back during the Kishi City battle, the captain didn't have her main gear or a proper protective suit. Because of that, she couldn't unleash her true strength. Approaching the men, the captain immediately asked Hao where Jin Ying was hiding. Right then, an angry beauty stepped out of her shelter, complaining that if the captain had been any later, she would have found a corpse. The captain smirked, saying Jin Ying still had not repaid her for the last rescue mission. It was obvious these two shared a very close bond. With all the injured secured, it was time to wipe out the remaining swarm and clear the nest. Yan Hao saw his chance and decided to secretly replenish his own depleted red mist energy reserves. As he absorbed the mist, he knew his last blast from. The red mist cannon had failed to stop the queen bee. He had to try. Once more, checking his system status, his red mist energy was almost fully restored. But suddenly a loud, heavy thrumming noise, like helicopter blades, grabbed everyone's attention, even though it was echoing from deep within the hive. It was the queen bee. She had rapidly vacuumed up all the surrounding red mist. A tidal wave of energy swirled around her, sparking an evolution that pushed the monster straight into the Lord level. Sensors went wild as the red mist reached critical breakthrough levels. Nobody knew where this massive energy surge was originating from. This nest was dangerously high tier, and of course, trouble never comes alone. A massive swarm of hound bees was closing in from behind, leaving the soldiers completely surrounded. Yan Hao roared for his squad to handle the swarm while he handled the queen, launching himself high into the air. Captain Sun barked out orders, telling everyone to cover Yan Hao's advance. Thick clouds of mist condensed around the queen mother as her body began to shift and morph. Yan Hao lunged forward, knowing that if he failed to kill her now, they would all end up dead. He slammed multiple heavy strikes into the queen's body, channeling his red mist energy into a dense sphere once again. He unleashed a highly concentrated crimson blast right against her head. A massive, deafening explosion immediately swallowed the area in thick smoke. Hao landed back down, waiting for the dust to settle as he tried to. Just as he tried to see if his attack worked, a massive, sharp stinger shot toward him. It ripped through the air at terrifying speed. The previous energy blast clearly had not finished her. Fortunately, Yan Hao dodged the deadly strike just in time, escaping completely unscathed. But he was still missing a proper weapon. His eyes locked onto a perfect opportunity. He spotted the queen bee's discarded stinger and immediately grabbed it. Holding the spike, he triggered his beast form, flooding it with raw power. Crimson mist swirled around the improvised blade as the young warrior launched himself upward. Wielding it like a sword, he blocked every strike the queen threw. He gathered every drop of his remaining crimson energy, preparing to wrap her in its deadly aura. Now wielding the queen's very own stinger, talk about a deadly mistake on her part. Time to return the favor. Yan Hao closed the gap, lunging at the giant bee. With one massive, devastating swing of his makeshift blade, he sliced the giant queen in two. A deafening explosion shattered the air as a glowing crimson beast core fell from the sky. Yan Hao was definitely not going to pass up a valuable Lord-tier beast core. He claimed the core instantly, but the moment his fingers brushed against the glowing sphere, overwhelming, pure force surged into his veins, shaking him to his very core. The force flooded his crystal. It was far too much power to contain. He collapsed against his sword, blacking out. Meanwhile, the soldiers finally finished the remaining bee swarm. Instantly, everyone noticed that the enemies had suddenly weakened. Captain Sun Rui spotted Yan Hao in the distance, lying unconscious near his blade. The boy's heart was racing wildly, and his neural signals were completely chaotic. Jin Ying quickly attached life-monitoring sensors to her fallen comrade. Yan Hao's prolonged exposure to the toxic crimson mist meant he might lose his mind. Captain Sun Rui immediately ordered him moved to the mobile medical bay. Saving his life was their absolute priority. The soldiers rushed toward their nearby temporary camp, placing Yan Hao inside a high-tech survival capsule. The metallic chamber felt cold, almost like a coffin. Jin Ying prepped the equipment. She quickly calibrated the systems and powered up the station. She injected a strong anesthetic, flooding the chamber to sedate him. He was sedated, but let's be real, this was only a temporary band-aid. He had to reach main headquarters immediately. Inside, Yan Hao was drowning in a violent crimson haze, fighting a dark presence clawing for control. A monstrous alter ego demanded he surrender his body and embrace the beast. Yan Hao felt his strength fading, wondering if he would die just like his family. Lying helpless, he felt the cold grip of death. This was the end. He silently begged his parents for forgiveness, failing to protect his sister. Shadowy claws wrapped around his throat, choking his airway, yet a spark remained. Distant voices echoed, refusing to let him go, begging him to stay strong. The fight was not over. He was a soldier. His family needed him. His little sister, Zui, was still out there, waiting for his return. He had a promise to keep, even as the monster towered before him. Its glowing, predatory eyes stared back, waiting to swallow his soul. But Yan Hao refused to break. He would survive this living nightmare. He had to find his sister Zui and shield his people from doom. He glared at the dark beast inside his mind, ready to fight back. This was a burden they shared. They had to make it back together. Everyone was waiting, clinging to hope. Yan Hao felt awful, but this was the price of gaining real power. Every breakthrough felt like a leap over an abyss. He was basically dancing on a knife's edge. Yan Hao seemed stable now, but his eyes remained tightly shut and his limbs refused to budge. Outside, the heavy military transports were charging directly toward the nearby safe zone, but a massive sandstorm blocked their path. Visibility was 0, and pressing forward was practically suicide, but 3 kilometers ahead stood the ruins of a dead city, perfect for taking cover. Captain Sun checked with Jin Ying, asking if the patient was holding up. She checked her monitors, confirming that his numbers were holding steady for now, even though he was still completely out cold. That was enough for Captain Sun. She ordered them into the ruins immediately. Staying in the armored medical bay wouldn't hurt Yan Hao's recovery. They navigated the trucks right into a massive, abandoned stadium. The thick concrete ceiling offered perfect cover from the howling winds, but the moment Captain Sun stepped out, her instincts screamed. Danger was close. She barked orders to scan the area for red mist and heat signs. Keeping Yan Hao safe was their absolute top priority right now. And let me tell you, things are about to get incredibly messy inside these ruins. Hostile bandits were hiding in the shadows, waiting to strike. They unleashed a silent barrage of poison-tipped crossbow bolts. Take cover. The soldiers scrambled as Adjutant Lin hardened his skin. Jin Ying realized the weapons were poisoned and screamed a warning. Captain Sun ordered her squad to split up and dodge the rain. Jin Ying summoned a magnetic barrier just in the nick of time to stop a massive boulder heading straight for their transport. The rock exploded, and Adjutant Lin shielded her with his armored skin. And just like that, our heroes find themselves in a terrible spot. Armed thugs looked down on them from every level of the stadium. They started hurling bottles, aiming to burn the squad alive. But those bottles did not contain fuel. It was something worse. Upon hitting the air, the fluid turned into a paralyzing gas. The raiders grinned, knowing their dirty trick had completely frozen the soldiers. Confident that no one could fight back, they slowly crept down. A massive, bald thug carrying a heavy axe stepped forward, laughing. He eyed Captain Sun, muttering some vile things about having fun. Bad move, a crackling bolt of lightning completely fried him on the spot. She followed up with a devastating kick straight to his chest, sending him crashing through a solid stone pillar, but her triumph was short-lived. The toxic gas was already working, freezing her limbs in place. The remaining bandits realized these soldiers were guarding something highly valuable. They were fighting to protect that massive iron box on the truck. Jin Ying summoned her last ounce of strength to hold them back. But a sudden crossbow bolt pierced her leg, ending her desperate defense. Helpless, she could only sit in a pool of her own blood, screaming as the bandits fled with the medical sphere in hand. Inside, Yan Hao remained completely unconscious, though his vital signs were slowly returning. Perhaps the rough movement actually helped. Things looked bleak. Captain Sun had failed to protect Yan Hao, leaving him kidnapped and Jin Ying severely wounded on the ground. Jin Ying sat helpless with her injured leg outstretched, trying to think clearly. The bandits had already set up an ambush before they even arrived. meaning someone leaked the military's movements. Right then, Aid Lin reported that the immediate area was clear. Most of the bandits had already escaped using the poison gas deployment. Outside, the furious sandstorm raged on, making ground travel completely impossible for them. They had likely fled underground. That is when soldiers found an abandoned elevator. A quick check proved it was the bandits' secret passage straight to their hideout. Captain Sun ordered an immediate pursuit to fight the thugs and bring Yan Hao back. But someone had to stay behind to guard their injured comrade. Captain Sun took Aid Lin along with her. Soldiers down with her, making it absolutely clear there was no room for failure. They had to bring Yan Hao back. The driver begged to join the mission, but she ordered him to stay as a rear guard member. Heading into the unknown below was simply too dangerous for him. His duty was to protect the injured Jin Ying, yet he refused to stay. Yan Hao was his brother, a true friend who had saved his life in the past. He could not just stand by. Seeing his determination, Captain Sun relented, allowing him to join on one condition: he had to keep up. Meanwhile, deep inside their hideout, the bandits gathered around their prize. They had dragged the heavy metal coffin back, eager to see what lay inside. Seriously, what is even inside? Everyone assumed it had to hold incredible riches. One massive thug stepped forward, raising his heavy battle axe to smash the container open. He struck the reinforced metal with all his might. But the blow barely left a scratch. He kept hacking away in vain. He was completely stumped by just how durable this security box actually was. A few outer bars bent, but the main lid refused to budge. Just then, a young captive boy raised his hand, claiming he could open it. He calmly insisted it could be unlocked, but only from the very bottom. The frustrated thug snapped back, telling the kid to shut his mouth. Their scouts never returned from down there, but the kid kept insisting. He had seen a special key down there that would easily open it. The thug grabbed him by the collar to threaten him, but the boy calmly offered a deal: let him go if he succeeds, or they can kill him. Inside, Yan Hao was waking up, catching drift of their words. He could barely remember what happened to him after losing control of his power. But one thing was clear: he was trapped deep in enemy territory. Thanks to his recent core upgrade, his senses were sharper than ever. Carrying the heavy box in their arms, they approached the stairs leading down. Walking ahead of the group were the hacker and the teenage boy. From inside, Yan Hao could sense everything around him in this dark underground. He could even feel his own body changing as new readings flooded his mind. A deadly venomous gland had formed inside him, a new power to command. It was a gift passed down from the mutated queen bee he had absorbed. Soon the gang reached the cavern floor, where massive, dinosaur-like bones lay scattered. To the thugs, it felt like the kid was just messing with them. But the boy insisted they had to place the iron box in a precise spot. Just as they figured nothing would happen, the box suddenly exploded in their hands. The heavy metal lid blasted high into the air, throwing the gangsters back. Blinded by terror, they scrambled backward through the thick smoke and dust. But through the haze, they saw the container was open. The kid had not lied. In a flash, Yan Hao erupted from the container, striking them down with lethal force. His venomous strikes injected deadly poison, leaving them absolutely helpless on the floor. Hao smiled, thoroughly pleased with how easily he could dominate the battlefield. It was the ultimate tool for crowd control. The boss was furious that the legendary treasure was just some random kid. There was zero loot, and the boss felt completely played by the military. He figured they had let them steal the box to infiltrate their hideout. Hao had no clue what nonsense this guy was spouting. Then a thug stepped up, bragging about his past life as a D-rank warrior. He claimed he could crush Hao in seconds and marched right up to him. The thug warned him not to play tricks, but Hao easily dodged his strike. Activating his venom gland, Hao delivered a devastating punch straight to the face. The self-proclaimed D-rank expert flew backward, crashing hard against the solid wall. The teenage hacker gasped in pure terror, watching the brutal scene unfold. Hao turned his cold gaze toward the kid, asking if he wanted some action, too. But the terrified boy had already passed out cold on the dusty ground. Hao ignored him, looking around at the countless bones of bizarre, mutated beasts. He picked up a bone. Deep fracture marks showed they died in violence. Locked down here, these creatures had clearly been forced to slaughter each other. It was like a secret gladiator arena. Just then, Hao heard a familiar sound. Hao recognized Captain Sun's unique electromagnetic signals echoing from 10 floors above. Thinking of that incredibly hot-tempered girl, Hao could not help but smile. Meanwhile, a chaotic battle was already raging inside the gang's main hideout. The military squad sent to rescue Yan Hao had finally breached the defenses. Adjutant Lin activated his hardening ability, letting bullets bounce harmlessly off his skin. The gangsters stared in absolute shock at his indestructible, stone-like body. He charged right into their front lines, scattering the bandits with crushing blows. He quickly reported to Captain Sun that the upper hideout was entirely secure. However, there was still no sign of their primary target, Yan Hao. Captain Sun ordered them to push deeper and continue the search. Massive claw marks scarred the walls, hinting at some dark secret nearby. The soldiers cautiously approached the entrance, leading down into the dark abyss. Down in the underground passage, they tracked a signal using Jin Ying's detector. There was movement right beneath them, then the signal vanished completely. They feared the medical bay was destroyed, leaving Yan Hao completely exposed. But right then, Yan Hao stepped out of the shadows right beside them. He was completely unharmed, greeting his surviving comrades with a tired nod. Clutched in his arms was the limp body of a young boy, shocking everyone. They desperately wanted to know what happened down in that stone dungeon. But Yan Hao just muttered about finding some kind of abandoned beast arena. Adjutant Lin immediately wanted to go down and investigate the ruins. Captain Sun immediately shut that down. They had to retreat first. The inspection could wait. Meanwhile, Yan Hao realized he was still holding the kid. He gently set him on his feet, but the kid woke up instantly hostile. Lashing out, the boy snatched a knife straight from Yan Hao's belt. Screaming for him to die, he lunged for Yan Hao's chest, but got casually shoved back. The blade snapped clean in half the moment it struck Yan Hao. His skin had mutated there, hardening into a layer of impenetrable animal scales. Yan Hao glared down, furious. Did this little punk actually want to die? The boy kept wheezing and cursing, but his skin told a different story. That raw red mist infection was breaking out, completely stripping his sanity. To knock some sense into him, Yan Hao gave him a firm slap on the back. The teenager collapsed onto the ground, and a small document slipped from his pocket. Their driver picked it up, realizing it belonged to a patrol team soldier. Specifically, it was from the 7th Squad, a comrade's personal identification card. Captain Sun studied the card. The man pictured was much older than this boy. And yet they shared a striking resemblance, likely brothers. With the boy fading fast, the soldiers knew they had to treat him immediately. Fortunately, the infection was fresh, still lingering in its earliest stages. Yan Hao knew he could save him if he extracted the corrupted red mist energy. Pressing his hand flat against the teenager's back, he began the delicate treatment. Meanwhile, inside Hukang City's closed operational zone, security was locked tight. The squad needed to report their survival to Mr. Zhang immediately. As a soldier left to deliver the news, Captain Sun issued her next command. Her deputy was to get Jin Ying to the medical bay for her injured leg. Adjutant Lin helped steady the girl, who could barely hold herself up. But before they could even move, watch how fast the vibe changes. A guard informed them of a strict new epidemiological quarantine protocol. Anyone arriving from high-risk red mist zones required immediate, thorough testing. This was a completely new rule that had never existed before. The soldiers of the Burning Blood Group were baffled by the sudden lockdown. But orders were orders. They were told to strip, disinfect, and submit to inspection. Without compliance, they wouldn't be allowed to take another step forward. However, Captain Sun Rui wasn't about to play along so easily. She demanded to know who authorized this, calling for the base commanders immediately. As the heated argument escalated in the middle of the street, someone approached. The local chief stepped out, demanding to know who was defying his direct orders. To face inspection, suddenly the young soldier saw them arrive. It was Captain Sun Rui, a mistake. He instantly started shouting. But why did she return with Yan Hao? It made zero sense. The captain wanted answers. Who authorized this sudden, unannounced screening? Zhang Jing stepped up. He argued that elite veterans were exempt. Only the rookies needed screening. The rest of them were safe. He insisted this whole check was purely for the camp's safety. Sun Rui was absolutely furious. Who gave this brat authority? That brat had zero right to make executive calls. Pushing past him, the captain ordered her squad to ignore Zhang Jing. At the last second, he yelled. He sneered, asking if they seriously planned to bring that filthy trash inside. A guard snapped right back. He is my comrade's little brother. To Zhang Jing, he was neither a soldier nor a patrol member. What an absolute jerk in his eyes. The kid belonged in the trash. Zhang Jing immediately ordered 2 of his personal guards to seize the boy. As they stepped forward, Yan Hao could barely contain his burning rage. Unleashing his poisonous vine, he decided to handle this local commander directly. Yan Hao walked right up and gripped his shoulder, telling him to stop. Instantly, agony, a wave of excruciating pain ripped through Zhang Jing's body. He realized he had been poisoned, but had absolutely no idea how. Yan Hao leaned in close, whispering that his underhanded tricks were pathetic. You are mocking the wrong people. Stop this now, before things get even worse. Standing casually with hands in pockets, Yan Hao watched his rival completely collapse. Just a few quiet words, and the mighty commander suddenly blacked out. Talk about instant karma. The guards stood completely baffled by what they saw. It simply appeared that Commander Zhang Jing had fallen suddenly and violently ill. Terrified, the soldiers rushed forward to carry their unconscious commander away. Even as he faded, Zhang Jing's hatred for Yan Hao burned deeper. Sun Rui leaned in close, quietly asking Yan Hao what he had done. He smiled, telling her not to worry. Zhang Jing just needed some rest. Once the unit returned to headquarters, they called an urgent medical meeting. Inside the medical lab, Jin Ying explained a terrifying discovery about her armor. A hostile chemical had been applied to sabotage her suit's defense functions. The moment she contacted the red mist, her shields completely deactivated. Saboteurs did not want her dead, just temporarily disabled. Chief of Staff Sun Ling stepped forward to deliver some grim news. Until they uncovered the truth, both were suspended from active duty. Jin and Sung immediately stood up to address the Chief of Staff. He warned that dangerous moles were currently operating inside their headquarters. They needed highly trustworthy people to protect his daughter and Yan Hao. If the traitor struck again, the next attack might actually succeed. Sun Ling understood the danger and promised to use absolute caution. Trusting only his own blood, he assigned his daughter's elite unit to guard them. A few days later, Yan Hao sat on a bench, analyzing their moves. With field assignments completely off the table, he had to plan his next move. Were traitors hiding in the army? To make matters worse, Yan Hao had just clashed with a representative of the Zhang family. Just then, a soldier rushed over to him. Bringing some shocking news, the man explained that the military had been reviewing photos of the captured teenager and spotted a young girl who looked an awful lot like Yan Hao's sister. The group immediately rushed to the hospital where the teenager was being kept. His condition had finally stabilized, but he still required close monitoring. When the boy was first brought in, his infection was incredibly severe. but over the past couple of days it had almost vanished. Talk about a medical miracle that left the doctor completely speechless. Right then, Yan Hao announced he would run a blood test and asked for 0 interruptions. The doctor was utterly shocked by these bizarre methods, standing there speechless with his mouth wide open. It was clear this kid was a common robber and a thug, yet his deadly infection was fading away. Yan Hao remained perfectly calm because he had secretly drawn the red mist out of the boy. Now, Yan Hao was carefully examining the photos. The images showed several different refugees, and a girl who looked exactly like his sister Zhu was bandaging a young man's leg. Right then, the boy woke up and started screaming, demanding they put his own picture there. Instead of his brother's photo, Yan Hao pointed at the girl, asking if the kid recognized her. The boy explained that 6 months ago he lived in a crowded refugee camp, which was exactly where they met and took that photo. The kid had no idea where this girl might be hiding now, and his memory was completely blank. Suddenly, the teenager threw a massive tantrum, screaming that he had not seen anyone, not even his own older brother, who had told him to wait in the city with a promise to return soon. You can bet those words hit way too close to home. Once told his own sister, promising to come back for her. The soldier explained that Ashu, the teenager's older brother, had recently been assigned to transport refugees, but got redirected to a secret mission and vanished. Yan Hao demanded to know exactly what that mission was and why he disappeared. To find out, he needed to search through the military mission archives. Feeling deeply sorry for the crying kid, Yan Hao placed his hand on the boy's chest, gently drawing the toxic red mist out of him. The watching soldier was completely stunned, but Yan Hao quietly ordered him not to breathe a word to anyone and act like nothing happened. When the boy finally recovered, Yan Hao promised to help him track down his missing brother, but first, the teen had to share every single detail about himself and that girl from the photo taken 6 months ago. The teenager asked again if telling him everything about the girl would guarantee Yan Hao's help. Yan Hao confirmed that he would absolutely keep his word. The boy then asked what exactly Yan Hao had done to make him feel so much better, receiving no direct answer. The boy smartened up and stopped prying, starting his story about what happened back at the refugee camp 6 months ago. Soon after, the kid was sent to the dining hall for some food while they planned their next move. Yan Hao wanted to head straight back to the city of Kishi since his sister had been missing for over 6 months and he could not wait anymore. The soldier admitted he did not. He was lost on what to do about Captain Sun. She had warned him of a traitor in the army targeting Hal, and now the boy kept a close watch on his friend to protect him. Hal listened quietly, making it clear that absolutely nothing would get in his way. Finding his sister was all that mattered. Then, a voice suddenly echoed from behind. Captain Sun stepped up, calmly asking who exactly was trying to stand in his way. Jing Ying greeted the group with a warm smile, feeling much better after her recovery. She received excellent medical care, so Captain Sun suggested moving somewhere more private. They needed a secure spot to talk. The girls admitted they already knew everything. Yan Hao was eager to uncover the identity of the dangerous military traitor. But as it turned out, there was no actual traitor, just highly functional security cameras. Sure, some people might feel uncomfortable knowing they were constantly being watched. However, the surveillance inside the base was purely to ensure order and security for everyone. Still, the threat of a traitor lingered. Internal security issues were being handled, but outside threats were growing too. No one could ignore the outside dangers. The captain admitted her secret orders. She was the one who instructed Jing Ying to closely monitor the security feeds. Soon after, a physician arrived with details on a brand new medical approach. Song Rui assured them she would not get in Yan Hao's way at all. In fact, she promised to assist him and asked for his complete trust. Hao did not get a chance to answer, probably wanting to decline her offer. Before he could speak, Jingying eagerly clung to his arm with excitement. She was thrilled to lead the investigation, using her specialized, top-tier skills. Even the loyal comrade stepped up, vowing to back his best friend no matter what. They could absolutely count on him. With everyone showing solidarity, things were looking up. Captain Sun finally asked Hao what his actual plan of action was. The ruined outskirts of Kishi lay completely empty and dead silent. As a young traveler approached the gated entrance, guards demanded the secret password. His simple response of nothing surprisingly turned out to be the correct answer. Zhang Shi urgently informed the guard that he had to speak with Hong. He brought urgent news that Yan Hao was already heading directly toward their city. The guard quickly contacted Mr. Hong to report this crucial development. Days passed and you just know trouble was waiting at the next checkpoint. Soldiers blockaded the city borders, thoroughly searching every passing vehicle. They claimed the strict lockdown was a necessary measure for local defense. Drivers were ordered to roll down their windows and show identification. They had to state their names and destinations under heavy scrutiny. Such intense militarization was unprecedented here, causing major delays and panic. The guards used defense as an excuse, while Hao admired Song Rui's slick ride. She explained that a standard civilian car was much better for keeping a low profile. Avoiding military transport was crucial. Song Rui added that security was tight. She confirmed her trusted aide Lin was keeping a close eye on Jing Ying. Their companion would be perfectly safe back at base, contributing in her own unique way. She could handle data operations far better from command, where she remained. She promised to provide real-time updates through their private military comms. Suddenly, an armed officer walked right up to their window. They got word about an inspection, while another guard stationed on the roof of a building suddenly reported an anomalous creature attacking nearby. Sure enough, a pack of iron wolves was charging through the city streets. They were heading straight toward them. The supposed brave soldiers immediately took off running, with no intention of fighting. Cowards, this left Captain Sun utterly outraged. Those idiots had abandoned the innocent people to their fate. Yan Hao stepped out of the car, saying he would handle these wolves himself. Terrified civilians tried desperately to flee from the savage beasts, but the monsters caught up, starting to tear them apart on the spot. Yan Hao leaped directly between the pack of wolves and the helpless people, crushing a couple of the beasts with his bare hands. Yan Hao shouted at a man, "If you want to live, you had better start running now." The remaining iron wolves glared at the young man. Ready to tear him to shreds, Yan Hao raised his heavy fist, determined to stop this nightmare from happening again. In an instant, dark memories flashed through his mind of how a similar pack of iron wolves had torn him from his family forever, slaughtered his parents, and left him completely alone. But things were different now. Yan Hao knew with absolute certainty that he would never let history repeat itself, not today. The rescued stranger stared in complete shock at this incredibly powerful young man, who was easily wiping out these anomalous creatures with his own bare hands in seconds. Nearby soldiers quickly realized who he was and immediately decided to warn Captain Zhang that their target had finally arrived in Kishi City. Yan Hao had single-handedly wiped out the entire pack, and his allies praised his insane combat skills, a total beast. Captain Sun stepped up, announcing she would take care of the rest. She introduced herself to the guards as the commander of a special forces unit, ordering them to stop the checkpoint checks and let the civilians enter the city. The guards did not dare argue, and soon the group and the remaining refugees were able to drive right inside. Honestly, it did not take a genius to spot the real motive behind those sudden security checks. The guards were definitely hunting for someone, but for Yan Hao and his companions, the main goal was investigating a Shaz case. The group arrived at the city defense headquarters and made their way to the archives where all the patrol logs were stored. They spent hours digging through the records. Unfortunately, a Shaz file was completely missing, even though the rest of the database was intact. Sun Rui spent a great deal of time sifting through the digitized records, but her extensive search proved completely fruitless. Not a single detail about Unit 7 or his old squad mates could be found. Even the basic rosters had vanished. Sun Rui confirmed that the entire local database was completely wiped. There were no records of Asha anywhere, a total dead end. There was only one option left. But they had one last option. Captain Sun contacted Jing Ying, asking her to run a check. Their brilliant, red-haired assistant was incredibly sharp. Known as all-hearing, Jing Ying promised to track down the data. Searching deep in the database would take time. The nameless soldier suddenly remembered that Captain Jia used to serve in the government army back when the patrol team was first starting out commanding Ashu back then. Surely he knew about those hidden events. They decided to head straight to the captain's house, since he had not yet returned to duty after his injury. But wait, look at what they found. Captain's entire apartment had been totally trashed. Dishes were shattered everywhere, and fresh signs of a brutal struggle covered the room. Looking over the scene, everyone instantly realized this was almost certainly the work of the City Defense Unit. Captain Sun could not understand why they would beat and abduct a man until she remembered the time How punished Captain Jiang, who was caught bullying the wounded Jia. This was almost definitely their petty revenge. Now, nobody doubted that the main purpose of that checkpoint at the city entrance was to hunt down Yan Hao and confirm his arrival. They had to go upstairs and settle things. The young group headed out to the street toward their car, but several military vehicles were already parked there, waiting. Expecting them, they seemed absolutely thrilled to see Captain Sun Rui. Li Kai, the deputy chief of the City Defense Unit, grinned at the girl. He had just received word of her arrival in Kishi. Right away, Li Kai got straight to the point. He claimed a patrol captain went missing during an outer city mission, and now Li Kai was begging her to join the search. Captain Sun did not understand why he was asking her, but the man explained that recently anomalous creatures around Kishi City were highly active, and a normal patrol squad could not handle them. Hao and Rui exchanged knowing looks. They understood each other perfectly without words. Captain Sun agreed to help with the search, but on one condition. Li Kai had to come along. The deputy instantly balked, claiming that was too risky. He worried a joint mission like this would attract unwanted eyes from high command. Talk about a suspicious excuse. Captain Sun could barely believe her ears. She tried to pressure him, firmly stating it was a direct order, and that she could easily charge him with insubordination or even have him executed, but he still tried to resist. Regardless, they dragged him into the vehicle anyway, determined to discover what was really going on here. If dangerous, anomalous creatures were roaming outside, why did Captain Jia go out there alone? How suspected the high brass had sent Captain Jia to his grave on purpose. Li Kai tried to save face, swearing that nothing like that was true. Soon, the car arrived at their destination. Stepping out to look around, Hao grew suspicious and highly alert. If anomalies were nearby, it made no sense because he could not sense a trace of red mist. Li Kai checked his phone and said they had to clear out of the area immediately. He argued that he's kept his end of the bargain by bringing them to the scene, so they could handle it without him now. Besides, he already had some men on the way to pick him up. Li Kai told Captain Sun that the search was fully her responsibility now and walked away, but Captain Sun, she completely disagreed, blocking his path and warning him that he wasn't going anywhere. She then demanded to know their actual objective and what was really going on. Right then, the sky above the city turned pitch black, crackling with violent lightning. The sheer power of the storm lit up the entire area in flashes. Li Qi panicked and screamed that it was too late as he tried to escape. No one knew who he meant, but suddenly the lightning began to gather. Every single bolt focused onto one blinding point in the middle of the chaos. Li Chi broke down in tears, crying that he was too young to die. That was when our friends realized why the area was completely clear of weak monsters. Even other beasts feared the massive threat currently emerging right in front of them. It was a terrifying, initial-rank thunder beast standing before them. Just looking at this thing made it clear it was a Lord-level threat. Now the strange beast movements and the missing patrol team finally made perfect sense. The disappearance of the patrol squad was absolutely no coincidence. While everyone stared at the thunder beast in absolute horror, Li Chi saw his chance. He bolted for safety. Spotting this, Captain Sun immediately ordered his capture. They couldn't let the coward run away as a soldier chased after him. Li Chi was confident he'd get away. He had no plans to die here. Right at that moment, the terrifying thunder beast opened its massive jaws. It had been gathering devastating energy this whole time, preparing to fire. A deadly blast was coming, and they had to move immediately. Hao and Song barely dodged the attack. Hao knew survival would be a struggle. Sun Rui urged the young man to hold the line while she grabbed a weapon. Meanwhile, someone else was watching this whole nightmare play out from a nearby roof. It was none other than Zhang Shi, the commander of the city garrison. And honestly, the guy looked way too pleased with this chaos. He wanted to see how his hated rival, Yan Hao, would survive this trap. Beside him, his assistant stared in shock at the captured monster core. He couldn't believe a single tiny device could control a Lord-level beast. The captain smiled, confirming that their technology was far beyond ordinary understanding. Their advanced technology was beyond anything normal people could ever imagine. In fact, the developers already had a whole facility for taming monsters. They locked up beasts far stronger than anything the public had ever seen. These beasts were on a whole different level. Captain Zhang smiled and told his subordinate that once they handed Yan Hao over to the client, the city of Kishi would be theirs. Meanwhile, Hao struggled against the storm beast. This creature used raw elemental energy to dominate the entire battlefield. Hao launched an attack, hoping his queen bee venom would work on it. He tried to close the distance, but a powerful barrier blocked him. The shield surrounding the beast repelled his strike completely. To make matters worse, Hao realized his beast transformation was forcibly cancelled. The thunder beast seemed to be generating a neutralizing electromagnetic force. It felt identical to the neutralizing grenade Captain Sun Ju used earlier. Right then, the thunder beast gathered a massive surge of electricity. It hurled a devastating electric blast directly at them. The young man barely managed to leap out of the way. But it took every ounce of his strength. Hao knew this was going to be a brutal fight. He could not afford to lose focus. As suspected, this beast was on a different level. It was nothing like ordinary Lord-level monsters. Unfortunately, Yan Hao was completely trapped by the crackling lightning, unable to get close. Still, he held on to hope. If he could just shatter that protective layer of electricity, the tables would turn. Their only hope lay with Sun Rui. Her own beast core was uniquely suited for this. Having been gifted by a lightning beast, that gave her the power to neutralize nearby energy particles, completely shutting down other abilities. She was absolutely sure that a single, full-power blast would strip away the creature's formidable electric shield, at least for a moment. It would not last long before the armor regenerated, but that was fine. A split second of vulnerability was all Hao needed to make his move. He charged straight toward the massive thunder beast once he got within range. Shouting at his ally to shoot, Sun Rui immediately fired her neutralizing grenade. In a flash, the neutralizing charge struck the target, and right then, the beast's lightning armor shattered, leaving its massive body wide open. Hao did not waste a heartbeat. He instantly triggered his beast form and slashed deep across the giant creature's skin with his poison-dripping claws. He wanted to test the lethal queen bee venom, and it worked like a charm. The thunder beast's heavy limbs stiffened up. It tried to strike back at him, but its movements were sluggish. Hao easily slipped past the blow and launched his next move. He launched a brutal counterattack against the creature, which was now practically defenseless. He noticed something surprising, though its raw power was extreme. Far greater than the other lords, without that lightning shield its body was surprisingly fragile and easy to tear through. But none of this would be possible without Sun Rui's perfect shot. Hao knew he had to strike even harder to finish this now. He saw the wounded beast desperately trying to scramble away. There was no way Hao would let it escape. He needed that core. He had not risked his life just to go home empty-handed. Meanwhile, the bandits watched the battle unfold. Honestly, you could feel the raw tension in the air. Why was Captain Zhang just standing there? Sun Rui watched in awe, realizing just how insanely strong Hao had become in such a short time. She had to step up her game too, but then Captain Zhang warned his subordinate not to assume they only brought one Lord-level monster. Sun Rui spun around, her eyes widening in pure horror as a shadow loomed over her, a massive, tooth-filled maw yawned wide, ready to strike. The giant beast had crept up without making a single sound, and now it was about to swallow her whole. Yan Hao moved instantly. He shoved the girl out of danger and jammed his bare hands into the beast's giant jaws. The creature looked completely stunned, as if it had swallowed something incredibly sour, even though it was Hao blocking its teeth. Clearly, having a human pry your mouth open does not feel great. It shook its massive head in pain, but Hao kept forcing the jaws apart. The beast swallowed the boy, but it cannot keep him down. Sure enough, the struggling beast spits out the source of its sudden agonizing pain. Hao knows this is absolutely no coincidence here. On top of everything, this new threat turns out to be a stealth beast. It uses near-perfect camouflage to completely hide itself. This allows it to creep up and launch surprise attacks totally undetected. Without a sensory assistant, fighting this monster is suicide. Just as the young warriors brace for an attack from the side, the monster strikes them from a completely different direction entirely. To make matters even worse, the thunder beast is back on its feet. Its deadly electric attacks are fully charged and completely ready. Lacking any beastly nature, Hao is in trouble. It is just two young fighters trapped against two massive lord-level beasts. Suddenly, the invisible stalker lunges from the shadows at Hao. The sheer force of the impact sends the helpless boy crashing backward. Sun Rui quickly gathers a crackling electromagnetic charge. She needs to hit the monster while it is still briefly exposed. Her high-tech grenade scores a direct and thunderous hit. Lightning surges through the beast, paralyzing it in its tracks. But just as quickly, the creature vanishes into thin air. Hao confirms its active camouflage is far too strong for normal sensors. Luckily, Sun Rui can track its exact movements using magnetic fields. The magnetic residue from her explosive grenade makes it impossible for it to hide. Hao readies his final strike, waiting for her signal. He will deliver a devastating, fatal blow the instant she spots it. Checking her radar, she detects the beast sneaking up behind Hao. The young man stands completely, eerily motionless. Suddenly, Sun Rui corrects her reading. The beast is actually to his right rear. Hao waits until the absolute last split second before making his move. He spins around with blinding speed, clamping his bare hands on its jaws. Forcing its mouth open, he unleashes a blast of toxic red mist. Let's see how this stealthy predator likes a mouthful of deadly poison. Unable to cough up the red mist, the beast's head completely detonates from within. They stand victorious over the massive corpse of the fallen Lord Beast. But they cannot afford to rest yet. The storm beast is still out there. Hao asks if she can fire another grenade. This is the only way to break through. Unfortunately, Sun Rui admits she is completely out of energy. Still, she knows another way to shatter that lightning armor. She begins transferring her remaining energy straight into Hao's body. They are preparing a time sphere. It will only last about 10 seconds, and even that barrier can only withstand a single attack. Still, that should be enough to launch a counter. They only have one shot at this. Hao struggles to close the distance. He cannot get hit. Hao completely concentrates all of his power. He poured power into his right hand, smashing the Beast Lord despite the blinding lightning. Captain Jean watched in utter disbelief as the monster's electrical storm failed to stop him. How could he lose? There were two elite lords here, a match for anyone. Even top-tier fighters would struggle against them, let alone these complete weaklings. Fuming with rage, the captain prepared to retreat while ordering an immediate missile strike. There was absolutely no way he would let this dangerous duo escape alive. Yan Hao stood battered and completely drained, yet deeply satisfied with the outcome. He had finally brought down the massive thunder beast, bringing the brutal clash to an end. Now he held two glowing beast cores, one crackling with wild residual electricity, and the other from the stealth beast. This victory belonged to Captain Sun, too. She had risked everything out there, earning half of these valuable trophies. Hao approached her. But the girl lay completely motionless, showing not a single sign of life. Suddenly, a rogue soldier returned, dragging a desperate Li Kai who was begging for mercy. Luckily, Sun Rui was physically fine. Her body was just completely shut down from pushing her abilities way past their limit. No deadly red mist in sight. High up on a nearby roof, soldiers readied their weapons. They locked on with anti-tank missiles, spotting their own deputy defense chief below. Yet the order stood. Without hesitation, they unleashed the heavy payload directly at them. Massive explosions tore through the ground, rocking the entire area around the group. Li Kai shrieked in absolute terror, throwing Captain Zhang straight under the bus. He refused to cover for his commander any longer, confessing everything to save his skin. It was all Zhang's plan: capture Yan Hao, get rich, and secure high-ranking promotions. They wanted to live like royalty. Meanwhile, Zhang watched anxiously from the rooftop. He couldn't comprehend how every single missile was missing its target so horribly. The gunners quickly realized the shocking truth about their failing guidance systems. The massive electrical surges from the dead beast's earlier attacks had completely fried the local electromagnetic field, making accurate targeting impossible. Then the shelling suddenly stopped. Seizing the moment, Hao ordered his ally to get Captain Sun out of there. They needed to reach Jing Yang and report this treacherous military mutiny. They had to transport the sniveling deputy, Li Kai, along with them, keeping him secure as a vital piece of evidence. He would face a harsh interrogation later. Crucially, word of this betrayal had to reach high command. Specifically, they needed to contact the Special Forces Chief of Staff, Sun Lin. The loyal soldier quickly obeyed, desperately wishing Hao would retreat with them. But that simply was not an option. Hao had to draw the enemy fire. If he got in that car, they would all die. He chose to stand alone as a human shield. Just then, another missile shrieked toward him. I am not even joking. Hao leaped up and kicked the rocket out of the air. Everyone watched in absolute shock. The soldiers frantically launched a volley of heavy rockets. Yet he effortlessly swatted them aside. Now he was closing the distance fast. Panicking, Captain Zhang ordered his troops to hold him off at all costs. Reinforcements were on the way, but these ordinary soldiers stood zero chance against him. He ripped through their lines like a gale, completely unstoppable. But they were already dead. Zhang tried to flee, unable to process how this monster had slain two lords and was still standing, but a heavy strike cut him off. Unleashing his beast form, Hao pinned the captain down with unyielding claws. Hao tightened his grip on the traitor's throat, mocking that he was thrilled to find the captain safe, though the fool had crossed the wrong people and paid the price. But then things took a bizarre turn. Devastating strike to the temple sent Yan Hao crashing aside, to his absolute shock. The young man could not even sense the incoming threat. Standing, there was a complete stranger. It was Lu Feng of the Lu Feng faction, a B-class warrior. Captain Zhang grinned, thrilled that his savior had arrived just in time. Hao stared, completely blind to this newcomer's identity. But the man coldly replied that a dead kid did not need to know anything. Hao blinked once, and the space before him stood entirely empty. Then, in a split second, the stranger struck with terrifying force. Somehow, Hao braced his arms in defense, and a brutal clash exploded between them. It was impossible to tell who held the upper hand. Hao fiercely parried every single one of Lu Feng's vicious strikes, yet the warrior still shattered Hao's desperate guard, mocking the boy for being far too weak. Yan Hao went flying to the edge of the ruins, and a split second later, everything erupted into violent flames, followed by a massive blast. Hao lay completely still, showing no life as a cold conversation echoed above his body. Lu Feng sneered, annoyed that he was called out by pathetic sewer rats. The mercenary faction had deployed 2 lords, yet they somehow fell to this weakling. Lu Feng decided he had no further business here and was heading back to headquarters. Captain Zhang Shi eagerly bowed, swearing he would not disappoint his master again. With a cruel laugh, Zhang kicked Hao's limp body, calling him a dead and useless dog. He then dialed his phone, demanding a video call with Captain Jiajun. Down in a cold holding cell, guards shook Captain Jiajun awake, telling him to look at the screen, because Captain Zhang had a special surprise to show him. Zhang grabbed Hao by the hair, mockingly greeting Captain Jiajun to show off the battered young man. Watching this, Jiajun was absolutely furious, unable to fathom how Zhang could let things go this far and torture a completely innocent person like this. Zhang barked back, stating his absolute hatred for Hao, wishing only the absolute worst for him. He then ordered his second squad to drag Hao away and throw him into the taming facility. But by then, Hao was already awake, sensing that Commander Jiajun was locked up nearby. He decided to quietly absorb the high-grade essence stone of the stealth beast first. Meanwhile, the Lu Feng faction's hidden base lay deep beneath Qixi City. At a depth of about 300 meters, there Hao lay bound in heavy chains and handcuffs, locked inside a reinforced chamber within an eerie laboratory. Soon, the young man's eyes snapped open. The absorption of the Lord-level stealth core was finally complete, granting him the ultimate power of shadow camouflage. He could now dissolve into complete invisibility for several minutes, and in this stealth mode, his movement speed surged dramatically. Calmly, Hao raised his hand toward the thick glass capsule holding him captive. Instantly, the entire container shattered, shattering into tiny pieces as the liquid spilled out. Hao looked around with intense curiosity. He never expected a hidden facility outside the city. Just then, they noticed it. The test subject escaped. A researcher frantically ordered security to be alerted. Yan Hao, the rogue subject, swiped his hand toward the camera. Connection lost. Back in the office, guards received orders from higher-ups: capture the subject. They quickly prepped heavy doses of sedatives and heavy capture nets. Suddenly, the elevator doors slid open and Hao turned invisible. Guards scanned the empty elevator, utterly unable to find him. Total confusion. They had no clue that Hao was already slipping away using Shadow Step. The guards felt absolute panic because capturing this specimen took tremendous effort, and now he was just gone, simply vanished. If they failed to find him, it was over for everyone. Hao smirked. His new ability felt incredible. Still, he could not hold this form forever. He had to find Captain Jia as fast as possible. Nearby, other guards noticed the commotion. What was going on? An experimental subject escaped, but honestly, they did not care. They only cared about guarding prisoners in the holding cells. Lab problems. Not their business. If lab guards cannot hold a test subject, that is their problem. Too bad for them. They were out of time. They never even got to scream. Their lives were over. Yan Hao bent the steel cage bars wide open. Captain Jia stared in absolute shock. He recognized Hao instantly. Hao just smiled. He was not easy to defeat. The kid joked that he owed it to the captain's training. Captain Jia looked terrible, downing water greedily while Hao explained that he had been searching for him because of missing Private Ashu. Instead, the captain was locked up. It made no sense. Hao asked if he discovered anything about the disappearance of the patrol squad. Jia Jun sighed. The situation was complicated, way worse than they realized. He spent so long searching, but found absolutely nothing. At the time, the patrol was just forming, but then the city defense unit started taking the men away under various shady special assignments. And after that, they vanished without a single trace. No explanations. The brass just claimed they went missing on missions. This went deep. The city defense unit did not even have the authority for this. Someone incredibly powerful was pulling the strings. The leverage to do this, someone much stronger, was behind the scenes. To find the real truth, they had to capture Captain Jiangxi first. Just then, the elevator doors slid open and armed guards emerged. Captain Jia told the kid to stay back. He would handle this himself. Too late, Hao knocked out every single guard with one sweeping kick. Hao joked that running away now would ruin his grand plan to capture them. The captain was utterly stunned. Hao asked if he could still move. He looked fine. Down in the labs, Jiangxi gave the order to release all the experimental monsters. They could not let Yan Hao escape. The troops talk back, saying the captain has absolutely no authority here, but Jiang. She screams that he does not care about authority, since the commander is missing. Everyone must obey his orders. If Yan Hu breaks through now, they are dead. Suddenly, the young warrior catches a faint sound and signals them to stop. Right down the corridor, a bizarre horde of various creatures is heading their way. He yells at the useless captain to get back and hide right now. It is completely obvious to him now that monsters are being bred here. This sick laboratory is a total crime against humanity, and those two lords were probably unleashed from this exact place, unleashing his beast form who shreds through the incoming pack like wet paper. These beasts cannot stop him. Gone, Captain Jiang, she watches the fleeing medical staff, screaming that this massive commotion ruined their chance to erase the files. The captain is convinced who will die under the endless swarm of monsters. But wait, a powerful, heavy strike suddenly hits the captain from behind. The impact is absolutely devastating, blasting through multiple thick concrete walls. Dust clears. Yan Hu slowly steps out from the ruined corridor. Nearby, the escaping scientists floor the gas, abandoning their useless captain. Boom, a sudden explosion rocks the entire base as they escape. Jiangxi realizes with absolute horror that he was just disposable trash to them. He desperately warns Yan Hu to back off, claiming he holds Captain Jaya hostage. But Hu instantly snatches the massive captain off the ground by his collar. He demands to know who runs this sick facility and who is calling the shots. Jiangxi sees his leverage is gone. Hu already rescued Captain Jaya. Terrified, the villain spills everything, pointing the finger at a mysterious Mr. Hong. This shadow boss offered limitless wealth if Jiang could deliver Yan Hu. Endless wealth and absolute power. This facility is just a branch for dark experiments and breeding monsters. Get this, Hu realizes these guys have been watching his every move. They even predicted he would dig into the patrol archive and laid a trap. It was a perfect trap. Jiangxi swears he knows nothing about the archive. It is just a coincidence. But he knows where the missing patrol members are taken and where Mr. Hong rests. Save me, Jiang begs for his life, offering to lead them. The captain guides them to an emergency hatch to escape the collapsed base. With the main exit blocked, this secret lower passage is their only escape route. But as they descend, a rancid, nauseating stench instantly hits their noses. Hu looks around in disgust, wondering why anyone would build a tunnel like this. Jiangxi quietly plots, waiting for the perfect chance to slip away in the dark. If all else fails, he will lure Hu directly to Lu Tang as a sacrifice. Suddenly, an oppressive and heavy invisible pressure weighs down on Yan Hu. While the others feel absolutely nothing, Hu's sharp animal instincts scream danger. He knows there is something else lurking deep within this dark dungeon. Meanwhile, the secret storage base of the enemy factions is completely in ruins. Song Rui searches the empty, cold rooms, finding nothing but piled-up corpses. Jing Ying grumbles that their long search came up totally empty. There was absolutely nothing to analyze. The scattered clues simply refused to fit into a clear picture. On top of that, Jing Ying was fuming that her friend had somehow lost track of Yan Hao during an archive search, the nameless warrior. Admitted to having an old score to settle with Shang, she over-captain. Jia, still, nobody believed Shang would actually target the Special Operations Unit. Jing Ying had already flagged the threat to the Chief of Staff. He was furious. Quickly, the military tracked down and dragged in a local guard for interrogation, demanding he spill every dirty detail he knew. But the guy knew next to nothing. He could only point them toward a secret stash which was already completely cleaned out. He had no real answers about the masterminds, because Captain Shang she kept his men completely in the dark. Still, Jing Ying dug up dark secrets linking the group directly to the Green Vine. If the traitor Li Kai spoke honestly now, it might buy him a lighter sentence. Otherwise, he was getting shot. He immediately remembered a crucial detail. Captain Zhang was secretly paying regular visits to the Red Mist Warehouse, a facility owned by the Green Vine Syndicate. For the girls, this Red Mist Warehouse was completely new information. The squad deputy confirmed that the entire facility smelled like a trap. Sensing danger, Captain Sun wasted no time and ordered an immediate sweep. Her adjutant tried to hold her back, warning that headquarters wanted them to deploy their main forces to Kishi City to stop a massive riot. But suppressing riots would have to wait. Captain Sun had other priorities. Her only focus right now was finding and securing Yan Hao. She ordered her aide to head back to Kishi City with Li Kai and wait for backup while she moved out to the warehouse with her elite squad. But when they arrived, heavily armed guards blocked their path, warning her that even elite military units were strictly banned from entering. Sun Rui did not have time for bureaucracy. With a fierce, heavy blow, she sent the guard crashing backward and told him to move. The rest of the security force stood no chance against her squad. They scrambled to alert Mr. Liu. Up above, Lu Fang was already standing on a shipping container, watching the intruders breach his gates. Sun Rui signaled her squad to stay sharp and move with caution. This place was definitely a major enemy stronghold. Then, in a split second, a violent explosion ripped through the air. Lu Fang had jumped straight down, aiming to crush her spirit, but her insanely fast reflexes caught him off guard. Jing Ying narrowly managed to leap away from the blast zone. Sun Rui raised her guard, demanding to know who this mystery attacker was. But the killer had no time for chat. He lunged directly at Jing Ying. Instantly, her aide threw up a glowing energy barrier, taking the brunt of the strike. It barely held, but simply surviving a direct hit from Lu Fang was a miracle. Furious, Sun Rui instantly drew her blade, leaping at the intruder with lethal intent. Her aide screamed out a warning. This guy was a highly dangerous B-rank combatant. Indeed, Lu Fang effortlessly dodged her blade with smooth precision. Without warning, the villain delivers a brutal punch right to Captain Song Rui. She has absolutely no time to react or defend herself against the attack. As she collapses onto the ground, Liu Feng rushes over to kick her down. It is a lethal strike, and her aide immediately realizes things are desperate. Captain Song Rui is locked in close combat without her advanced weapons. She cannot fight back effectively, allowing Liu Feng to grab her hair. He sneers at her strength, claiming even yesterday's weakling was tougher. Hearing this, Song Rui immediately knows exactly who the brute is talking about. She refuses to let herself lose to a lowlife like Liu Feng. Meanwhile, Liu Feng is ready to test who can take a harder beating. But out of nowhere, a massive fist slams directly into his own face. The impact is so crushing that it cracks the villain's metal mask. The force sends him crashing backward, smashing straight through the concrete walls. Yan Hao makes his grand entrance, leaping through the dust to catch her. He cradles Captain Song Rui in his arms and gently places her down. As he checks on her, the captain stares in absolute shock at him. Jing Ying also wants to rush over and hug him right there. But with a dangerous enemy still breathing, they must finish this fight first. Across the room, Liu Feng finally recovers, struggling to understand what happened. He winces in intense pain, totally caught off guard by the strike. He never expected Yan Hao to show up, but Yan Hao has answers. He points out a mutual acquaintance, prompting Liu Feng to spot Zhang Shi. The realization hits him that his own ally sold out their hideout. In a blind fury, Liu Feng charges forward to kill the traitor. Zhang Shi screams for mercy, but Yan Hao easily intercepts the attack. He holds him back, stating they still need the corrupt captain alive. They have a lot of questions, they need this rat to answer. Stunned, Liu Feng backs away and quickly unleashes a sonic attack. But Yan Hao effortlessly deflects the shockwave with a bored expression. Calling the move far too slow, he counters with a sharp headkick. The blow sends him sliding back, but his anger only boils higher. Now completely unhinged, the villain is determined to end this boy. He summons his signature sonic wind blades and fires them at Yan Hao. But Yan Hao easily slides past the deadly, incoming razor gusts. Jing Ying is annoyed he shares her wind powers. Captain Song Rui demands answers, but Zhang Shi claims he knows nothing. All he knows is that Liu Feng serves a mysterious leader named Hong. As sonic blades close in from all angles, Yan Hao stands perfectly still. He waits for the perfect split second before dodging the strike. Despite his opponent holding a higher rank, Yan Hao is unimpressed. He effortlessly closes the distance and drives a punch into his gut. The villain never expected this level of raw, overwhelming power. The impact slams him back, denting a massive tank of red mist. Metal begins to crack, releasing the toxic gas into the air. Song Rui quickly orders her aide to evacuate everyone immediately. To monitor the mist's effects, Captain Sun chose to stay and watch Yan Hao's movements. It was incredibly dangerous, but she had already made up her mind. With her decision made, Jing Ying grabbed her friend's hand, promising she had a way to help. Captain Sun, right then, Liu Feng pulled out a tiny capsule, staring down at it. He muttered that no one could ever beat him this easily. Immediately after, the villain gulped down the pill, fully knowing his health bar would crash instantly, but he would keep his sanity while absorbing the raw power of the red mist. After absorbing it all, Liu Feng braced for combat. Instantly, Yan Hao lunged at him. In a fierce clash, quickly noticing that Liu Feng was suddenly moving much faster, the villain shouted that this was true Class A speed, and now Yan Hao would experience it firsthand. Liu Feng felt the surging red mist filling him with power, letting him strike Yan Hao and send him flying back. Yet, despite his best efforts, it was clear that his heavy strikes were being blocked. Liu Feng realized he couldn't keep up this level of power long enough to win. Right at that second, Jing Ying scrambled atop the tank, channeling the raw power of the gale force wind into a massive spiral hurricane. It was a storm shield, meant to form a defensive barrier around Yan Hao. Immediately, he felt his body grow incredibly light and agile, all thanks to his red-haired ally, but Liu Feng had no intention of backing down, launching a devastating blast right at the top of the vehicle where they stood. Standing firm, Yan Hao raised one hand, halting the red mist energy cannon, openly mocking his enemy for thinking this trick was anything special. At this point, Liu Feng realized with absolute horror that he was dealing with an absolute monster who was easily absorbing his energy, closing the distance. Yan Hao unleashed a relentless barrage, leaving the villain zero room to dodge or counter. Hao shouted that the red mist wouldn't save Liu Fang because he was ending this now. Completely overwhelmed, Liu Fang simply could not fight back any longer. He finally realized he was facing an absolute beast. Meanwhile, the main organizers witnessed, watching this whole clash unfold, completely unable to believe their eyes. Liu Tan, this city's shadow leader, was stunned to see Liu Fang actually lose. It turns out Yan Hao is far more dangerous than they initially calculated. Liu Tan realized he needed to keep a very close eye on him. Right after, he ordered his men to wipe all data and prepare to evacuate. Before leaving, he decided to have the cleaner downstairs handle the mess, pressing a button on his remote, deep within a secret, hidden facility, a capsule holding a massive beast core hummed to life. A giant monster awoke, hungry. Standing over his defeated opponent, Hao demanded that Liu Fang tell him where Hong was hidden, but Jing Ying poked the motionless body with her chopstick, sighing that he was in no condition to answer. Hao had totally knocked him cold. Hao sheepishly scratched his head, claiming he barely even tapped the guy. Watching this, Zhang Shi stared at Hao with pure awe, instantly ready to follow any command from this insanely overpowered young fighter. Zhang eagerly offered to guide them deep into the facility's secret zones where their operations were run. However, he admitted he didn't know everything. Since he was a low-level lackey, he only knew the locations of the secret laboratories. Suddenly, an eerie mechanical alarm echoed, making Hao freeze. They had reached the exact spot. Hao picked up the faint sound of human breathing behind the heavy wall. He easily could have smashed the door with sheer force, but he wanted to keep everyone safe. Jing Ying stepped up, confident she could handle it herself. Quickly, the girl hooked up her portable device directly to the lock system and started hacking. Within seconds, the door clicked open, revealing a sight that made them freeze. The sight was horrifying. Rows of glowing capsules held unconscious human bodies inside. It was sickening to realize how many innocent souls had become lab rats for these sadistic scientists. Enraged, Captain Sun was ready to execute Jiang right then, without a trial, but Jiang begged for his life, swearing he was just following orders from the top brass. Just then, Captain Jia noticed a familiar face inside one chamber. It was Ashu, the very officer Hao and his squad had been desperately hunting for. Hao lunged forward to shatter the glass, but Jing Ying grabbed his arm before he could, warning him that these tanks were actual life support systems. Breaking them would kill everyone instantly. They needed the proper shutdown codes first and immediate backup. Sun Rui stepped in, announcing that Commander Lin Yuxing had already arrived with forces near the Red Mist facility and ordered them to regroup there. Suddenly, a soldier shouted that the captured beast core was pulsing rapidly with light. They gathered around the device, completely blind to whether this was a threat or not. Terrified, Zhang Shi stumbled backward and fell, sensing the looming disaster about to unfold. Jing Ying also caught the bizarre energy readings spiking on her console. There was a massive buildup of red mist nearby, and then the floor buckled. An intense quake rocked the facility. Hao screamed at the girl to get back. The main capsule was acting up, its internal pressure rising dangerously. The machine rattled, and it became blindingly obvious that they had to run. Liu Feng had transformed into a hideously mutated beast from inhaling the red gas. The visual was terrifying. Sun Rui stood paralyzed as she stared at the monster. It looked identical to her lost uncle. Hao realized the device holding the core acted as a massive beacon, and something incredibly deadly was heading straight for them. He snatched up the pod with the core to draw the beast away. Leaving it here meant certain death for everyone trapped in those life pods. Hao and Sun Rui bolted out to the main street, the mutated Liu Feng close behind. They did their best to lead it off as a chopper circled overhead. From above, Lu Tian watched Yan Hao's desperate run with a cold curiosity. If the kid survived this, he would definitely be worth recruiting. Hao threw the cork container high into the air and screamed at Sun Rui to dodge. Driven by sheer instinct, Liu Fang leaped up to intercept the falling canister. But a monstrous worm erupted from below, jaws wide open to swallow them both whole. Meanwhile, the military finally rolled into Kishi City to lock down the chaos. Commander Lin Yuxing was annoyed, still blind to what lay at the storage base. All his driver knew was that Captain Sun had located some hidden underground facility. There were innocent people down there, and time was rapidly running out. As the armored column breached the gate, they saw a massive nightmare towering over the base. Lin Yuxing scowled. It looked like he had to clean up this absolute mess himself. Kicking the heavy car door open, the commander leaped straight into the action. Taking down a titan like this required going all out with his powers. He ordered his subordinates to guide the reinforcements to the research facility. While he stayed behind to handle the monster alone, the man was incredibly strong, and with few quick leaps he crossed the distance, but even for this warrior, what was unfolding before him was totally bizarre. An absolute behemoth was towering over the city buildings. It looked like these beasts had been locked deep inside the secret underground labs. This beast tracked heat signatures because its eyesight was terrible, having spent almost its entire life in total darkness. Now, the monster was locking on with those thermal sensors, unhinging its massive jaws to swallow a human whole. Yan Hao instantly activated his beast claws and slashed multiple times, but he could not even leave a tiny scratch on its thick hide. Captain Sun quickly realized they had to pull back, but Hao knew this beast was locked onto him. If he ran, the massive creature would follow and obliterate their main base. So Hao decided to hold the line right here. He wanted Captain Sun to lead the survivors to the lab. Sun Rui could not imagine how this guy could possibly fight this thing alone, and she absolutely refused to abandon him. Hao, meanwhile, was furious. There was no way he would let this beast destroy the evidence. With a roar, he charged. Meanwhile, Jingying hooked up her terminal to one of the stasis pods to salvage some data, but almost everything was completely wiped. Still, these survivors were incredibly lucky to have a master coder like Jingying on their side. Suddenly, the doors flew open as reinforcements arrived, bringing a massive wave of